Hi, everyone. Kinsey Schofield here, and I hope you are having the most fun, festive holiday season. As we wrap up 2025, we are looking back at some of my favorite interviews, some of my favorite guests, and I know that you love and enjoy them too. So kick back, relax, and enjoy your Christmas holiday, your Hanukkah, all the things. And I appreciate you, and I look forward to seeing you again in 2026. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
This is one of my best, most favorite panels in the entire world, because today I have for you royal authors Tom Bower and Robert Jobson. I can hear the applause across the United States. Thank you so much for being here today. This is the first time I get to meet both of you in person. Did you feel butterflies too?
Always, even when you appear across the pond.
Earthquakes. Very California. Speaking of earthquakes, I feel like the biggest headline over the last few weeks really related to the British royal family is this idea of a royal reconciliation. And we have some of the top aides having these super secret meetings here in London, conveniently papped, photographed, and every last detail in the Daily Mail. Tom Bower, what was your reaction when you saw those headlines?
I thought it was confection. I thought it was manipulation. I thought that it showed, firstly, Harry absolutely desperate. I thought that Meredith Maines, who is a very aggressive PR for the Sussexes, got way beyond herself because she really doesn't understand the British royal family or Britain, but understands how to project her clients. And so I think she got it wrong by leaking it or even letting anyone know about it. Right. That was a great mistake. And I don't think it'll produce what they hope. And I think in the end, I don't think the Sussexes themselves know what they want anymore. But so I thought it was a terrific story and just reflected the opposite of what probably the leakers hoped it would show.
Oh, that's such a good point. Jobson?
Well, I mean, it does look like it's a Sussex thing. I don't necessarily think it is. I'm more of a cock-up believer in these things. It was my understanding that Tobin was the guy that wanted them to go outside, and things like that. So the photograph was everything. You've also got to remember that these are effectively talking about, these are communications people. They're not private secretaries, and they're not the people that necessarily speak to the king every day. They would have to, but he would know about it. He would have known about that meeting via Clive Alderton. Tobin would have had to clear that he was meeting these people as it was with Harry. I'm not sure who benefits out of it terrifically, really. I think that maybe the Sussexes, as Tom quite rightly says, are looking a little bit desperate at the moment. I think this Angola walk we've just seen him doing again what he did in 19, that his mother did. It's a bit like a one-trick pony, Harry, and he's reaching out. He's obviously desperate for this reconciliation. Really, because of course we know that his father's still he's being treated with chemotherapy, and he's already said publicly he doesn't know how long he's got left. So maybe they want to get discussions going about the all-important things that happen at a time when people are coming to an end, money, I think.
Well, I think it's more than just money. I think what Harry fears is that when and if his father dies, his brother will banish him from Britain. I think that the hatred amongst William and Kate, rightly so for what Harry has done, and Mr. like ink poison, is absolutely irreversible. And what Harry fears is that once Charles passes on, he won't be let into Britain at all. And that is a major problem for him.
It is a problem, but the reality on that as well, we've also seen, haven't we, the story by Victoria Ward in the Telegraph, where they were talking about, and that upset the palace quite a lot about talking about funeral arrangements and things, and how William and Harry wanted him to be centre of that. Look, it's difficult to know. One thing I agree totally with Tom with is a reconciliation with William is not on the cards whatsoever.
Tom, do you think that King Charles is capable of forgiving Prince Harry for all? I mean, we heard that specifically he was overwhelmingly devastated over Harry's shots at his wife, Queen Camilla, the Queen Consort. is it a situation where I say all the time, I think he has a soft heart? Or is this about legacy? And is this about looking like the bigger person? Because he preaches a lot about forgiveness. We heard him talk about open borders. Sometimes he's very kumbaya. And I wonder if he's trying to put his money where his mouth is by making peace with his son. Because how can we take him seriously when he's meeting with Ukraine and Trump and trying to make peace as a global leader when he's not even at peace with his son?
Well, I think I disagree with you about that, because Charles, when he was the Prince of Wales, was absolutely unforgiving to anyone who said no to him.
Oh.
And in my book on the king, the rebel king, it's called, my best sources were people who'd worked for him, and he'd been absolutely ruthless when he fired them.
Oh.
He had absolutely no time for anyone who said no to him. So he's a man who hates confrontation, and he has no forgiveness for people who don't agree with him. So I think the whole thing with Harry is it's guilt. I mean, it's guilt as a result of the divorce, the relationship with Diana, the fact that Harry is rather dim and he didn't look after him to make sure he had a role. But more, it was neglect as well in his teenage years when he was chasing Camilla and all the rest of it.
Club H, is that what that...
Exactly. There's that and a lot more. But I think that now, when he obviously is feeling mortal, he would like some sort of settlement. But I don't believe for a moment that William and Camilla would allow or would ever trust Harry, to come back into the fold. And I think that's a great problem for Harry, because the one thing he does need is a base and some security in Britain now. He's finding it very lonely and isolated in California, and Madame in Montecito is not making it easy for him. So he is at a loss. And that brings us obviously to the Angola thing, which is really a stunt. It's a pathetic stunt. You've got to look at the way that Harry has actually been badly advised, because after he lost that case in London against the British government to get armed protection, to do that interview on the BBC was just crazy.
Yes.
But he was taken there by Meredith Maines, who thought this is the way to get our voice across. And one thing you wanted at that moment was contrition. You wanted to say, end it all. But she thought, no, we'll go out and attack, just like here. And I think that is his problem. And he's got other cases coming up. He doesn't stop. He's in the clutches of lawyers who are making a fortune from all his litigation. And instead of being advised, cool it, if you wait a year, there may be some chance, he's doing the exact opposite.
Jobson, let's assume that the Sussexes did accidentally leak this story, and it was an accidental Sussex cock-up, okay? Could Maines have done so with the motivation that they were going to have to guilt, to use Tom Bauer's words, the royal family into this royal reconciliation, because now it's on the world's radar, and they're going to look really bad if they don't invite these two into the fold again?
I don't think the king would look bad. I think the king probably is, like any father, he had a very good relationship with his son Harry before the Meghan scenario. Better relationship with Harry than he did with William, and he'll have a degree of sadness and empathy. He was stopped really, but from any cooperation or contact really because of the government case again with Harry was bringing against the government over security, and that he couldn't really get involved in that because that would be a constitutional problem. So I think that if you've got to look at this at the human level, I totally agree with Tom. I think that both William and Camilla will be advising that this guy's had too many chances. You cannot trust him. You certainly can't trust his wife, and that they are out of control. They use any opportunity they can to benefit themselves, and that's effectively what they are about. But I would have thought that I think the king probably, looking at the way he is, I do think he's a very empathetic guy. He's pretty ruthless too. But I think that he would probably want to at least have one conversation more with his son. And if that happens, it's probably Harry's coming over in September for World Child. The only real opportunity you've also got Trump around that time, is Balmoral. And if he does come to Balmoral, then Camilla can go to Burke Hall for a couple of days. I can't imagine that she'll be there when Harry's there. So no, it's a possibility. I think it's a long shot, and I think that eventually the king will probably be talked out of anything. And even if he is considering it, I think a lot of people will be saying that this is not a good idea.
Well,
because the guy is not trusted.
Rob, when Harry made that dash to London, when the King revealed his cancer, to my surprise, Camilla was in the room for the 30 minutes. And she was there to make absolutely certain that Harry...
Right. That Harry, that's true.
You don't think she was there?
No, I don't. In fact, I'm pretty certain she wasn't. Yeah.
I have heard I'm not ganging up because you know I love you. You're a human teddy bear.
No. I'm not saying that. It's just I don't think that's right.
Well, let's say whatever happens, I don't think she's going to let the King be trapped into an argument with Harry.
You're right about that. Yeah.
And he'd have to fly to Balmoral to see the King.
Absolutely.
But I think it isn't just the trust, you know. I mean, Harry has made a fortune and still does from Spare and the Netflix series.
Absolutely.
And he said such terrible things about William and Kate and Camilla. I mean, he didn't say that. I mean, and there is another book there. Mm-hmm. There are another 400,000
he said, how many pages did he tell the Telegraph he removed from the original
400.
Book? Because he didn't...
A few more.
So there's another book there with all...
And Meghan told us she found her diary at Frogmore and she never signed an NDA.
I hear you, but I'm just, all I'm saying as a father, if you are going through what he's going through, you did have a relationship, you can't, you do listen to, obviously you listen to your wife, obviously you listen to your son, who's your wingman and your heir, but there will be always, in any fatherly relationship, even with the biggest black sheep in the family, there's always going to be a draw there.
And I think it's interesting because we always say, look at what he did to William and Catherine, and that is very important, and I believe it was cruel. You're suing all of these newspapers for leaking private information while publishing private texts.
I think brothers' relationships are different.
My point is, when you read the comments of the royal watchers and people that are really emotionally invested in this family, they feel like the ultimate betrayal was towards Queen Elizabeth in the last few weeks and months and years of her life, and Prince Philip. Prince Philip in a hospital bed, worried about what they're going to say on Oprah Winfrey. So, when you think about the people that will have an opinion on this, whether it's the British public or just royal watchers in general, their real betrayal, they feel like the ultimate betrayal was to the Queen, who had given up her entire life for this role.
Except for, actually, he said very little about the Queen. He said very little about the Duke.
But she was worried about the future of the monarchy.
But, I mean,
and he said somebody's racist.
Father, I think.
It was all going to come out in a lifetime. The Oprah Winfrey thing did. The book would have come out. Spare would have come out. As did, of course, the Netflix series.
But it all came out afterwards. Well, she died.
Well, yes, but the Netflix series was before.
It was being filmed, but it came out afterwards.
But they didn't know that. And what's even more important is that when he went to Philip's funeral, he'd already done the Netflix interviews. Yeah. He'd written halfway through Spare. He knew, as he stood with his family, what he was going to say.
He'd sold out. This is the guy who sold out.
He was disloyal. But I think what we've got to look at the present moment is, I don't think he feels in any way guilty. I don't think Harry feels any remorse. And I think that is the key thing in all this reconciliation. He still thinks that he's owed an apology from Charles and from William for the way they've treated not only him but also Meghan. And he doesn't want to realise that it's his behaviour, his writing for money, being so unbelievably disloyal, that has caused and aggravated the problem.
Well, that won't be coming, will it?
No.
Well, what message does that send to the public and to other members, hardworking members of the royal family, if the King allows Prince Harry back into the fold without any accountability?
But also remember the human side of all of this. Everyone. I know that it's almost turning into the, Peyton Place as a soap opera. But there is always the human element, and humans do things, instinctively sometimes, and you don't know quite what the King is necessarily feeling. Yes, as a person, you'd listen to your wife, you'd listen to your other son, but also, as the King, you'll make your own decision.
Well, I think the other point, which is very important in all this, is the accusation by Meghan, supported by Harry, that the royal family is racist. And her account of the conversations, which was a lie by her, to Harry when he first met Meghan, and that fabrication, the damage that did around the world, especially in Africa and Asia, about the royal family's image, has been and remains colossal.
Yes.
And this is the guy, Tom, that then tried to backtrack on it after to say that actually it's all to do with
racial consciousness, subconscious racism,
and all that,
unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias. And this is the guy that used a word that was used by the National Front to address another army cadet. This is the guy when he was a little boy that mocked an Indian bus conductor in a terrible way, and then wrote about it. Then wrote a letter to the bodyguard, repeating it after he was slapped by his mother for doing that racist comment. And this is the guy that wore a Nazi armband. And so to be lectured by someone like that, I find really abhorrent. Actually.
Well, I go further than that. I mean, all those things can be excusable as youth and all the rest of it. But the support of Meghan in her full story about the conversation, which was banter, and I know that from first hand, and was really inconsequential, to support that was his act of folly, because he was already a grown man at that stage. He knew the consequence of it.
He was pretty grown when he said the comment, he was in his 20s when he said about a Pakistani fellow officer. But I do think you're right on that. I think that that racism, and it still sticks.
Do you think it would embolden Harry and Meghan if they don't have to show any accountability and they're just, because of the king's soft heart, allowed to come back into the royal fold? Or
that won't happen.
Will it inspire them to repeat past behaviours if they don't have to show?
Well, I think you want to make a distinction. I think that Harry is desperate to get back, one way or another. Meghan couldn't care two hoots.
Amen. She's selling her booze.
She's in California. She doesn't want to come back here. Yeah. She's got what she needed. She's got a title. The C-rated actress is now a global star. She's got everything and money. So for her, and that's what's so interesting, is the division.
Yes.
And of course, people always say, well, can the marriage last? I think Harry is so devoted to his children that the thought of not having
and he wouldn't see them really. That's
exactly.
The point.
No, there's no way she would allow them.
So he is now he's between a rock and a hard place. That's his fate.
Does it not annoy you though? Because you're absolutely right. She couldn't care less if she came back here. But doesn't it annoy you that she's trying to sell tea and scones and she's got her royal crest? I mean, isn't there a contradiction
she'll look at
there?
Anything there that will make the money. I mean, she's simply, she's got a brass neck, as we'd say. She really doesn't bother. She can see this way. She's probably looked at the king selling selling the Duchy originals for charity and all that sort of stuff, and thought, and it's almost, you look at the actual the logos and everything, it looks almost like the stuff from the Duchy originals. No, she doesn't. She's on her own route.
It annoys me. Tom, we've seen a very chaotic rollout of multiple brands and multiple projects for Meghan in 2025. There's an anxiety attached to it. We first of all, we changed the name from American Riviera Orchard to As Ever. We release With Love Meghan. Products are not ready to go on the As Ever website, but it comes a few weeks later. She starts an Instagram account the same day it's announced that Tiggy has lost her stepson. Meghan's all over Instagram, hawking affiliate links. We launch a podcast, Confessions of a Female Founder, and then all sorts of new products that roll out through As Ever. Why does this feel, when she has the resources around her to make this smooth and make everything copacetic, why does it feel like a hurricane?
Well, it's chaotic, but that's where I disagree with you. I don't think she has resources. You see, to actually launch a brand with all these different products, you need a huge amount of money. You need tens of millions of dollars. And what we're seeing is that she can't find a financial backer. So I think what's happened is that she's launched these products in the hope that somebody will come along and say, there's money in this, let's support Meghan and her As Ever brand.
Oh, so hence the sold out, sold out, sold out.
Well, that's also distribution
failure. Is that
failure,
what you think?
No, it's not distribution failure. She hasn't got the money to make it in the first place.
Yeah.
You see, she's made 50 jars of jam.
Yes.
Well,
they're sold out. Yeah.
They're sold out because she gave them away.
Right.
But the real problem is, if you want to make 50,000 jars, you need to have millions of dollars. She hasn't got the money for it. And what's interesting is that there isn't a CEO, there's no chief executive of the As Ever brand to actually develop her products. So there she is with all these ideas, but in the end, it all boils down to herself as the brand. So there's Gwyneth Paltrow and Martha Stewart and the Kashadins, but who is Meghan? And that is the problem. And therefore, who is the brand? So what we're really seeing is a sort of forlorn, ridiculous woman trying terribly, terribly hard. But you must give her credit for one thing. You never see her ever forlorn. You never visibly see the defeated Meghan.
Right.
And that's what's so interesting about her. I have great admiration for her strength. The strength of purpose, it may be misdirected, it is. Yeah. But my God, is she a fighter and survivor.
It's relentless.
These people, also the people that the PR are going on, apparently part of the deal when they're meeting journalists and things is they present them with a little box of these Meghan flower sprinkles.
Oh, yeah.
Are being distributed.
You've had quite a few of them, haven't you?
I haven't had none.
He's got a kitchen full of them.
No, I don't think I'm in the flower sprinkle brigade.
That's very interesting that because we get a sense for who really Gwyneth Paltrow is. We know exactly who Martha Stewart is, but we've not seen a consistent Meghan. If your first introduction to Meghan Markle, and for a lot of people it was the Oprah Winfrey interview, that was an angry woman. She seemed bitter and she seemed vengeful. And then you watch the Netflix series, bitter and vengeful, and then all of a sudden she's pursuing joy in sweaters and cooking in someone else's kitchen. It's like whiplash. And so is she going to struggle to sell this brand when we don't feel like we've seen who she truly is yet?
Exactly right. I mean, we should not show what her surname is. This is Meghan Markle.
Meghan Sussex.
Sussex. No, this is not going to be a success, is it? It's going to be another in the long line of desperate failures that we've seen from the beginning of this whole branding scenario. What makes me laugh is that they launch a brand, they always launch a brand, and then they change the name every time they seem to do it.
Yeah, our archetypes.
There's lack of consistency, there's lack of planning. They press the launch button before they even got the fuel in the rocket.
Is the relentlessness we see from Meghan almost the young actress that was running from gig to gig, audition to audition, fingers crossed, I'll make it, and then you either make it or you don't. Like, she had pilots that she was excited about, but those pilots never took off, never saw the light of day. Did she learn this, did she learn this ability to just keep going, whether it's embarrassing or not, through the acting journey?
Well, I think you've got to go back to when she was 5, and her father, who was a great man, Thomas, and much, much abused by her, took her to an award ceremony, and they left on the red carpet. And she looks up to him and says, "Daddy, this is what I want to do." And that was it. At the age of 5, she always wanted to be in the spotlight, the star, and was just totally frustrated because of her limited acting abilities. And Suits would have disappeared forever. But she had one amazing ability, which was to find a man who needed her.
Oh.
And she played him brilliantly. The actress was sensational. And you really got to, if you don't mind me pushing my book, Revenge.
My favorite book. I love Rob Jobs too, but Revenge, I quote it like daily. You know this.
That extraordinary conversation she has at the Wolsey restaurant here in London with her PR woman, when she reveals that she's going to meet Harry on the secret date. And the PR woman says to her, "Well, do you know what you're letting yourself in for?" And she says, "Oh, I've Googled him, I've researched him, I know exactly what I'm doing." And that was critical when she met him at Soho House. And for the second date, of course, it's Meghan who rings Harry and says, "Let's meet again." I mean, she targeted him. She knew exactly what she was doing. He was a vulnerable man whose relationships with women had been disastrous, manic depressive very often, and she fulfilled his need. She gave him what he needed. And she played it brilliantly. She never intended to stay. She's got what she wanted now. I mean, a vast mansion, a few million, all the rest of it. But she's reached the limit of her abilities. That is her dilemma now. And he, in his naive, foolish way, doesn't understand the quandary, the dreadful position which he's in, other than he doesn't like it, but doesn't know how to get out of it because his advisors, who keep on changing, don't understand what's happening in Britain.
Well, this is a great question for you, Robert. He is rehashing, recreating Princess Diana moments. Both of them, I think, cling to the memory of Princess Diana, who has become a martyr, especially in the United States. Does it get old? Is it like a broken record? Like, find something else, do your own thing.
I think that when he was part of the royal family, doing that had a bit of a resonance, really. But of course, Princess Diana's been dead a quarter of a century, and I think that to redo that again, he did it in 2019.
Wait, can I ask you a different question? No, wasn't the Diana recreation initially a way to rehabilitate him when he was out of control as a young man? Are we seeing a full-on just copy and paste of a strategy used by the palace initially? They sent him off to Africa. They wanted him...
Yeah, that was different. That was a different time. When he went to Angola on the recent time, 2019, he reenacted the Diana walkthrough. I was there at the original walkthrough, which was all a bit farcical because I remember she walked through the minefield. It was all symbolic, and then the photographer said, "Oh man, we didn't quite get that. Can you do it again?" There was a mine went off, almost bang in the background. It was all set. It was very steady. There were no mines when she walked through. That had been cleared years before, But there was a mine went off in the distance because that was the way it was staged, and we asked her to do it again, which she did. So I look at that and I just think, well, that had resonance. Even when he was still part of the royal family, there were probably 50 photographers and journalists all on that trip. This just seems like you've played that role. You can't play your same hand again. He doesn't have the resonance that he used to have, and I think Tom's, is right. Their brand is tortured, really. And this is the guy that was on the Freedom Flight. This is the guy that, he wanted his privacy. The problem you've got here in a relationship with Meghan and Harry is this is a boy that, was pretty much traumatised by media presence when he was little. He didn't really want any of this publicity. He was always attacking photographers. And she's someone, ever since she was on the red carpet, who's craved publicity. Mm-hmm. So this is a relationship based on one that wants to be out of the public light, doesn't want his children involved, and that's why we keep them get the back of their heads, and one that's desperate to utilise that.
And utilise the children.
And utilise the children. So you have this huge push and pull going on. It's never going to be, it's a terrible situation. And you can understand both of their perspectives. But Meghan, I think, is winning. She's the one who's got what she wanted, but on very little talent.
Yeah, she's absolutely winning. I would love to know what it's like after writing Revenge, because you're one of the first people to speak out again. And I shouldn't say it. You were the first. I don't want to say you're speaking out against them. You were just one of the first people that was brave enough to reveal some of the stories you'd heard, because they have been proven to be very litigious. They've threatened a lot of people, and they've taken some people to court, and they've won. When you read stories in The Hollywood Reporter, and then that incredible Vanity Fair piece, which I never thought, American Hustle, are you proud of your book? Because you basically opened up the floodgates, and I know you're not surprised by it, but how do you feel when you read some of these pieces coming out of the States?
Well, you're very generous. My career is built on destroying icons. So that, I think it was the 27th book of being anti the heroes. But I think that there's so much more. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is what's so fascinating about Harry and Meghan, that it didn't stop when this book ended in 2022. It goes on and on. And I think in the end it is about the survival of the House of Windsor. Mm. I think that if they don't somehow find a way now to silence them, the House of Windsor is in great trouble. And that is really where both Rob and I, why we carry on, because there's
it's important. Yeah, it's important at this moment in time. You're absolutely right that we're at a point where when William becomes king, and then Catherine, and you've got this whole this sort of renegade court that's going to be causing trouble continuously, and that will become the dominant factor of his reign, and that's something that the king's had to deal with. I would stress that I did do what Meghan wants, Meghan gets,
You did.
and the Tiara Gate in around about the time.
You did.
Yeah, so
You did very well.
But you know what? I think of you as just a cuddly teddy bear.
Yeah, well, that's not fair. Yeah, I did my books as well, but there we are.
You did very well.
Anyway, I do think that on this issue, Tommy's absolutely right. This is critical times for both the King and for William, and they've got to work out what they want. They've got to work out there needs to be some form of, as you say, I don't know if they can silence Harry. I don't think that's going to happen. So they've got to come to some sort of arrangement with him. And this is what we're probably seeing at the beginning. But the biggest thing you've got a problem with Harry is, as you've said all along, trust. He's got 400 pages of book that he could do. And look, you only have to look back in history. Edward VIII, another sort of character that you can link with Harry in terms of the way they behaved. He brought out his memoir and book biography on the eve of the coronation. This is the guy that was banned from the coronation. This was very damaging stuff.
The problem for the British royal family is now that whatever Harry says, it doesn't even have to be true. And it doesn't have to be
some people will believe it. Yeah.
And that people will believe it. And my fear really is, amongst many fears, is that the King and William do not have brilliant advisors. I mean, we've just got to look at the way that they handled the photoshopping incident. It was a disastrous management of a ridiculous, trivial thing. And I don't think they know how to handle part 2 of Spare or Meghan's diaries or what was going to happen. The American prince and princess, Lilibet and Archie, starting to cause trouble as well, and being in competition with William's children.
Which inevitably that will
Exactly.
happen. You've got at the moment, we've seen it from the Wimbledon pictures of Charlotte and this perfect family.
Fuming in Montecito.
And then on the other side, in Montecito, these kids can be growing up, they're first cousins, they're the American prince and princess.
Exactly.
And it's going to be America versus Britain. What's wrong with our prince and princess?
Exactly.
And there's going to be a row.
Well, they'll have to be at the Super Bowl, won't they?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But they won't be invited, which is Meghan's other problem.
Right.
She doesn't get invited to A-list parties.
But I reckon these young kids would be quite big, and that's why she branded them already.
They already have their own URLs.
And she writes a diary note to them every night or
She
something.
sends her emails. To
But
your
that's quite nice for any books that they want to do.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? It's actually very, very...
You've got an entire inbox that with mom stressing about how dad's looking through the bushes again, looking for photographers
my life
outside.
as an exiled princess, it's all there, ready to go.
Well, to your point about needing to get them to hush, I mean, is that what these potential secret summit meetings are about? Just
on the contrary,
desperation?
No, I think it is that the King, the Windsors here, don't know what to do about Harry.
But Harry's desperate, that's what you say.
Harry's desperate, but how do you reconcile that terrible history of him monetizing his disloyalty against the royal family who are getting old and suffering cancer and all sorts of it, with finding some sort of way through? And I don't think there's anywhere in the palace, let alone in Whitehall, a genius official who knows how to and can command respect. You've got to remember they were kicked out. The last great private secretary, a man called Christopher Gite, who was fired by Prince Charles and Prince Andrew for being too clever and too astute. And that is the problem, that the new breed are not good enough to actually find a way. And so we're stuck at the moment just watching the goldfish bowl go all the time, different colours, different fish, the same fish, finding some sort of solution.
And of course, the Queen had 70 years of loyal service with the Duke at her side for everyone to fall back on. The King, he's 3 years in the job. He hasn't got that. He hasn't got that same stability and sense of purpose, sense of trust from the people. And now you're going to be moving on all the way. You've got someone attacking you, and it's someone from the inside. Your son, it couldn't be closer. And I think that's been very, very damaging to the institution and very, very damaging to the family as well.
And unfortunately, because Harry and Meghan go through so many employees so often, when the royal family does lose someone with a significant title, that is splashed all across the headlines. And that's probably news that they, instead of really investing in great people or trying to seek out those people, I wonder if they're just trying to avoid similar headlines.
Well, I don't think, the trouble is that King Charles is a very poor employer because he only wants yes men.
Yes.
And that is a great problem. And he always has, as I explained earlier.
But doesn't he have that in common with Harry?
I don't think Harry makes the choices of the staff. I'm sure that's all done by Meghan.
Yes.
As they roll through them, it's her behaviour, her demands, which are fueling constant change. I mean, he doesn't know what he needs. And that, he is not educated to know that. I mean, here's a fellow with very poor exam results, the rest. So I wouldn't worry about it. She is very clever. Her problem is she's not clever enough. She lacks self-awareness. She doesn't realise.
Or believes she's too clever.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, that is a terrible but dilemma to be in, that not recognising your own limitations. And so she's struggling the whole time. But it's, the truth about Meghan is she will always find a way in which she thinks she can win. And the casualties are irrelevant, whether it's her father, her old best friends, her first husband. There always will be casualties in her life. The question is, when will Harry become the casualty? That is the question that...
Well, I think he's already the casualty.
Yeah,
I think he's...
but worse is, I believe worse is
between the devil and the deep blue sea, really, isn't it?
What about Trevor Ingleson? Why do we never hear from Trevor? I know he's happily married, has brand new kids, and his wife is very financially stable. I mean, well, I
wouldn't.
I think that he was really hurt by her to toss your rings in a
you
FedEx
just said it. He's got a
envelope.
wife. He's got children. I think keeping Sturm's probably the best thing to do.
Yeah, is that it?
If he wants to keep his wife and kids and some sort of semblance of normalcy, he'll avoid the Sussexes with as much.
You've got to remember the thing about Trevor is that when they had their wedding in Jamaica, there's not a single photograph or video that survived it. Meghan destroyed them all before she left the island. The marriage was never going to last.
Yeah.
And that's
Where was the photograph then? I did see a photograph of their backs looking out. I know there was one of Harry and Meghan from their wedding, but they did the same for the Ingleson wedding.
No, there were photographs of that. They did a lot of foreign trips together, checking out restaurants. But no, the wedding, and that was an extraordinary thing. I mean,
and didn't she get mad at her daddy for taking pictures of video?
And she took all his photographs away.
Oh my God.
And that's what's so interesting. He knows that he was used.
Yeah.
So if you know you're used, he's a proud man. He tried hard.
What happened to the ice hockey guy?
Oh, that was just... the man
we
of
believe
great
that was just a
interest-
fling.
That was a fling. The man who's really interesting was, of course, the chef in Toronto.
The
Yes,
chef.
the
Corey
chef.
Vitello. I mean, that was... And in my book, I tell the story how he was absolutely determined to get rid of her, but didn't know how.
Oh, wow.
So he was so thrilled.
This week, I'm joined by Tom Bauer, author of Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, the defining book on Meghan Markle's very brief history as a working royal. Revenge is a forensic assessment of Meghan's character and her ruthless ambition, cementing Bauer's reputation as one of today's leading investigative biographers. Before we get into it, Tom, ludicrous headlines over the weekend suggesting Prince Harry could somehow worm his way back into the fold. It seems like Sussex PR is in overdrive lately. Are you seeing that too, or do you feel that way?
Well, I do think the Sussex overdrive is unbelievable. But, I mean, I don't think that he is going to get back in. I mean, I think that there are two reasons. One is I think that William wouldn't allow it. And secondly, the moment he got back to America, he immediately promoted Disney and his trip to Disney World, which showed that he is very commercially minded, which we'll get into later on, which makes it impossible for him. And of course, Meghan wouldn't come back to Britain. So I think it's always the same. He wants his cake and eat it.
Isn't that the truth? All right. So Revenge was released in July of 2022. Since then, based on polling and media coverage, how would you describe the trajectory of Harry and Meghan's reputations professionally and personally? It feels like they've taken quite a bit of a dive.
Yeah, I think professionally they've gone down dramatically. And I predicted it in the book, but even I would not have thought it'd be that accelerated. I think personally, I think they've separated their professional lives, but I think what's really a great problem for them now, as of in the last few weeks, is that Meghan has got no real income anymore. She's finished. The
Right.
Netflix series is over. There's no great podcast. They don't generate any money. And I don't see where she is going from here. I think she has a major problem. And I think as of this week, the signal for her great problem is that she turned up at Kevin Costner's party for the emergency workers
Which she
in
skipped
California.
last year. She skipped that last year. That's a great
She
point
skipped
that
it
she,
last year, and that was very critical because at that moment last year, she was about to promote her Netflix series and didn't want to, firstly, be seen with Harry, and secondly, didn't want to go somewhere where she'd appear cheap and give it gratis. And this year, she is desperate to be seen,
yeah.
and that's why she turned up. So I think she has a major problem, financially and professionally. And I think that Harry has a problem because he's lost his charity centre Bailey in Africa. He had better up, and all these commercial deals are declining. I think that his reputation is somewhat toxic, and I think Invictus is his only lifeline, and there'll be problems with that too.
I mean, we've
So
seen people leaving Invictus recently. Important, I think that's you mentioned the Disney special. Does the Disney special at all look to you like an influencer pivot? Because that's what I was like, oh my God, oh no. I mean, they're spokespeople.
absolutely, I mean, the moment they went there and allowed themselves to be photographed, and I thought, well, how much are they being paid for this? And quite clearly, they're being paid to promote it this week too. It'll work in the sense that I think it's Disney today and some sort of butter spread tomorrow. I mean that's the trajectory they're on, but they're going to have to earn some money.
That's true. Did anything make the cutting room floor when it came to revenge simply due to space? I know that publishers love chopping up well-researched books, without any hesitation about like you're sitting there going, no, this is so important, but sometimes it's just about shrinking a book down.
I mean, they're where I mean, you've got to remember it was a pathfinder, the book, and even the publishers couldn't quite believe some of the things which I discovered. And one of the big things at that time was sensitivity reading. There was a great fear that she would play the race card. And so, for example, there were great arguments about whether you could call her strong-willed or not, because she at the time was playing herself as a black woman, and black women, if they're strong-willed, seen to be a stereotype. I think that would now not occur.
Mm.
I think there were various things about her sexual life which I dropped out on the grounds of privacy laws in Britain.
Oh
I
my
think there are
God,
other
I have
things.
got to get you intoxicated, Tom Bauer. I would love to hear those stories.
Yeah. I think I've forgotten them.
Oh no.
But
Then
I
apparently they
think
weren't that good.
they were very good.
Oh
I mean,
no.
I mean, the privacy laws are pretty strong here, and that's what she used as a weapon at the time. So
Yeah.
there were quite a few things about her personal life. I'll work them into another book, I think.
Oh my goodness, Tom Bauer. I love that deep tease right there. That's something that we can look forward to. What did you think? Because in your book, Spare, you talk about how Earl Spencer was concerned about how this marriage might be trouble. And you say at William's request, Earl Spencer weighed in. He went to Prince Harry and said, you should reconsider this, pump the brakes. His advice provoked a bitter reaction, you say. Well, later we find out that Prince Harry, since moving to the United States, approached Earl Spencer to ask permission to legally change his family's name. What was your response to that Harry would want to take the Spencer last name? And does it surprise you that Earl Spencer said, I don't advise it?
Well, the answer is, unfortunately, that was one of the revelations, or many revelations, in my forthcoming book, which I had and heard about this months and months ago. It was actually when they were also filming for the Netflix series that he asked Charles Spencer, because for some reason, Meghan didn't like the surname Mountbatten Windsor. If you remember, in her first uh, lifestyle series with Meghan with Them Forever, She says to Carling that her surname isn't Markle but Sussex.
Mm-hmm.
And she was desperate to get it. She said we never had a proper surname. And of course they did. But so it's now Sussex, although she keeps on being called Meghan Markle. But I think that she did go to, and that she wanted to get rid of Mountbatten Windsor because she didn't think it was the right name for her children at school. And Spencer said very forthrightly to their face, no, under no circumstances. I think Charles Spencer probably doesn't think the marriage will last forever and just didn't want his name to be associated with Meghan if the event of a divorce. That's my guess. But I did know that he was absolutely emphatic that she wasn't going to have his name.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
ought to remember another thing about all this as well. But of course, we might come on to this. But in Meghan's mind, she is Diana. I mean,
yes.
Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law. So I think that was another reason for Charles to say no.
Absolutely. If she were to separate with Prince Harry, the Diana 2.0 could continue to live thanks to the last name. That would get, that it would still give her that royal sparkle that she needs. I do have that. Let's just jump to that. Meghan believed she was as important to the monarchy as Princess Diana, you write in the book, and her visit to Australia in October 2018 only boosted that view. The more Harry drew parallels with his mother and the more Meghan must have been convinced of her importance to the monarchy. Do you still think she's that delusional? And maybe the answer is watching her at Kevin Costner's 805 Live event in $300,000 worth of jewelry, including Diana's Cartier watch.
Wherever she is, whether it's at Costner or in Colombia or in Nigeria or wherever, she's always, her publicist will reveal that she's wearing one of Diana's pieces of jewelry. I do think that the Australian trip turned their head in a crazy way, although she behaved appallingly during the trip.
Yeah.
But in Harry's view, this was his mother all over again. What Meghan never really understood, probably not even now, is that when she was cheered as a working royal, it wasn't because she was Meghan Markle, it was because she represented British royalty and all the values of the Queen and all the tradition and 1,000 years of history. So people were cheering not just the person, but also the institution. I mean, clearly she was very attractive and she did, magnify and was magnetic for her own, in her own right. But the idea that she was Diana was always a fantasy, both of herself and of Harry. And Harry completely misunderstood his mother, who he obviously barely knew, and didn't realize what a manipulative and determined woman she was herself. So he completely misjudged the comparison between Meghan and his mother. And his mother had amazing status. She looked beautiful. She had terrific poise. She worked very hard at being a royal. She was very empathetic with a lot of sick people. None of the things that Meghan would ever dream of doing. I mean, Meghan would never go and spend day after day in hospices and hospitals and with the poor. She really wanted to go and party with Elton John in the south of France. So the comparison between the two was ridiculous, both as in looks and in poise and in background and everything else, plus the work ethic of Diana.
I think it was over a year ago. I reported that I had heard that Prince Harry was trying to work on a Princess Diana documentary, and now it's being reported by other people. Prince Harry developing a Princess Diana documentary. You just said what I keep saying. He didn't know this woman. Like I mean, I don't mean to be cruel, but he's off at school. I feel like she's become this martyr saint character in his head. Is he really the authority when it comes, especially when it comes to the death of his mother, where he, and I'm not saying I should make a Diana documentary. I just wonder how accurate a documentary on his mother would be from, by him, surrounded by all of these yes people.
It would be totally inaccurate. I mean, from his own book, where he says for a long time he thought his mother had just disappeared and now believes she'd been murdered by the paparazzi, which is ridiculous. She died because
she was in a speeding car with a drunken driver, not wearing a safety belt. But also, he doesn't realize that she wasn't murdered by the media. She played with the media. Diana was a huge influencer, a huge manipulator of the media. She collaborated firstly with Morton in his book, and then she collaborated in a Panorama interview. She repeatedly see chosen journalists and feed them information. So the idea that his mother was a victim of the media, she was a master of the media and a master of media manipulation. So he'd get it completely wrong. And of course, the one thing which I do sympathize with him is that his mother clearly was completely misjudged and to become Charles's wife. And that was a catastrophe. And in that sense, his father, for good or evil, didn't treat his mother very well. And it all became very, very sad. But I don't think I think, however, that if he did a program about his mother, that would be for money.
Yes.
And I think it would be a shocking act of further disloyalty, not least to his father. And he can't play it both ways. Does he want to come back or not? If he wants to come back, which I think will be a problem for him, he certainly can't make a film about his mother.
I think it would infuriate his brother, like you said. In Revenge, you talk about how Meghan's lack of knowledge about British history meant she could not understand that Diana had won the public's affection after years of work. That was a real investment. People felt committed to the journey because they had spent so much time watching Diana really grow up. I think that I think that pairs nicely with what we're talking about with Prince Harry. It's just that lack of understanding. She just thought that, she could burst in and say, look at me, I'm here now. Everybody accept and love me. And she didn't really take time to get to know the process.
I think there was that, but I've got to tell you, my research for my new book, the number of times she was warned before she married what the nature of being Harry's wife and part of the royal family would be, and the nature of how she ignored all that advice for two reasons. One is she really did believe she could do what she wanted. And secondly, I don't believe she ever intended to stay.
Mm-hmm.
She always intended to take the title, take the connections, and get back to California, especially after she saw, and this I think is a critical thing in her life, that it was William and Kate who were
Yes.
going to be the stars, and not Harry and Meghan, and she didn't want to play second fiddle.
That is so true. Well, you mentioned that when you talk about this incredible Australia trip for Harry and Meghan, that's when they decided they wanted to step out of William and Catherine's shadow. But they were much bigger. They didn't need all this. As of mid to late 2025, Harry and Meghan's popularity in Australia is at an all-time low. Polling indicates that they're among the least popular members of the royal family, and public perception has declined significantly since that 2018 royal tour. They haven't been back since. Why wouldn't you nurture that popularity? It's nothing they do makes sense to me. If they really did think that this Australia trip was the end all be all that changed everything, why wouldn't you try to nurture a fan base, because they're celebrities now, in Australia?
Well, I think there are 2 points there. Firstly, the Australian government would have to invite them.
Mm,
And secondly, they won't invite them because the British government and the British royal family would make absolutely sure that no invitation was forthcoming. Because the
mm.
one thing they don't want is them treading into the Commonwealth. The Nigerian trip was bad enough,
Yeah.
but the British government made sure there were restrictions on what they could do. But I don't think the Australian government would want to invite them. And I think the other side of their travels is they'll only travel where it's free.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'd want to spend the money of going to Australia. It would cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And what for what? What are they selling? That's the point, you see. When did their other foreign trips, Meghan was selling her cereals and selling her commercial things, the jams or whatever, the image, the brand. That's all taken a huge hit now. She is facing a crisis. What does she now do? She's fired her biggest shots, the best shots, and they're duds. And Harry has nothing to sell either. In fact, he hates selling. He just wants to be a charity worker, which is pretty limited too. So I think they've got a real identity crisis,
Mm.
which will be resolved in the next few months, one way or another. And I don't think it can be to the good. But the point about it is, you see, they're notorious. So just watching them is great sport, because if they turn up at Kevin Costner's beach party, one just wants to see what efforts they're making to be famous and loved. And
Yeah.
we just enjoy the spectacle of these two who will have spent hours and hours preparing themselves. I mean, Meghan spends hours successfully making herself look beautiful and choosing her clothes and all the rest of it. For what? It's for us to talk about them, and we talk about them because we're all desperate to see how the story ends. Uh, and there's a long way to go.
Yeah, it is a morbid curiosity. I mean, when people ask me about it, I just say I can't stop. Look, it's like I'm so fascinated by some of these poor decisions. I mean, you're right about Australia. I should have thought about that, but to me, it was just such a missed opportunity. If that's where they really felt loved, Meghan doesn't even send product over to us. She can't even send product over to Australia. So, nothing that they do business wise makes a lot of sense to me. I'm curious about your new research. In Revenge, you analyze the discrepancies between their public personas and the Sussexes, their private behavior, suggesting that their claims of victimhood and even charity work were often exaggerated and fabricated. There's been no real improvement to their credibility since you wrote this piece. Have you found other examples of them exaggerating their victimhood or their charity work?
I mean, you've got to understand, which now is clear, that Archwell, their company, is not a charity. It's a commercial organization. They give very little money away for charity because they haven't got much money in the pot. And compared, for example, to Bezos, who gives away hundreds of millions, they give away a few thousand. I mean, it's very small and diminishing. And that is part of their problem. So the victimhood, I think, by now has been pretty played out. I mean, no one is going to listen anymore to them bleating about being racist and being victims of racist and all the rest of it. They've played that out. I think now they're at a threshold. We're speaking at a very critical time for them, that they actually have to prove what the next stage is. And does she write a book? Does he do something foolish like a documentary about his mother? What do they do to retain the initiative? I mean, there's only so many times that she can produce photographs of her children without their faces, or especially when Trump was in London last week, she posted a picture of herself picking flowers. I mean, she always seeks an opportunity when there's news about her enemies to post something, and it's just very amusing how desperate she is for retaliation, for saying, "Don't forget me," to say, it was a nightmare if I'm not mentioned. I can't survive without being seen. And that's her great problem. I mean, she's not invited to the great A-list parties, let alone the B-list parties. I
Yeah.
mean, who is she anymore? And that must worry her and worry Harry too. Although it must be said that when he was in London last week, I mean, he does have a way with children. There is a residue of goodwill towards him when he does his charity acts. But he had to give away $2 million to charities to get some sort of credibility. 2 million, which I don't think he's got much left for that year's savings. So they're trying terribly hard, and it's just fascinating to see at what stage they're going to fall.
You write in the book, Harry must be nuts. This is one of the text messages his friends were sending around to each other after Meghan's first introduction to Harry's friends in 2017 during a shooty weekend at Sandringham. It didn't go very smoothly, you say. You describe her challenging anyone whose conversations clashed with her values and taking issues with jokes about sexism and feminism. I mean, the kind of jokes you'd hear from a bunch of boys that have known each other since they were younger. Harry's friends reportedly felt that she repeatedly reprimanded them and called her a real dampener of the party, to which I would say to you, and this is the woman trying to teach us how to entertain on Netflix, this buzzkill. What else did Prince Harry's friends say? That she just was the fun police?
Well, I mean, this particular saga at Sandringham, which obviously was told by someone who was there, was a decisive moment. I mean, it's the moment where effectively she says to Harry that you've got to dump all your friends. And none of those people at his shooting weekend were then invited to the dinner after the wedding. I mean, that was the crunch, that she separated him from his hinterland. And of course, he does suffer now enormously by not having a large number of the friends he had in London. In fact, his friends in England are despair and they're furious with his behaviour, and many of them won't speak to him. But that weekend, it was a decisive moment. What she couldn't understand that Harry's class of people on Friday afternoon, Friday evening, it was when they oil their guns to get ready to go off and have a good shoot on the Saturday, either partridges or pheasants or whatever. And these are big occasions, especially on the royal estates. And it's like when she said to Harry, "You can't shoot anymore." And of course, shooting isn't just getting the birds; it's all part of the social fabric of country life in Britain. And what it showed was that she wasn't going to make any concessions to the class and the sort of people which she was going to marry into.
It's amazing how she can be so judgmental towards them. And I mean this with the royal family too, but take everything she needs to help elevate herself. Like if you can't stand these people or the idea of class, then why are you titled the Duchess of Sussex on a Disney infomercial on Hulu? Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, absolutely. That is her hypocrisy and her narcissism and her commercialization and, frankly, her appalling behavior that she never intended to stay in Britain, but just took the title. And in the end, what I really hold against her, she betrayed all those people who tried very hard, from the best of intentions, from the Queen downwards, to make her feel welcome and believe that she would integrate herself into the royal family, into Britain. What she couldn't understand was the language. She couldn't understand what being royal means. She didn't understand the nature of trust. And that's the thing about Meghan. She is a very, very deceitful person. It's got to be said, in her relationships with her own family is one sign. But the other is that all the inaccuracies which she told Oprah Winfrey, which of course caused huge damage to Britain's reputation around the world and still do, and continued in all her interviews to promote herself. I mean, even in her podcast with Lima, she said, there was the cosmetics woman, she said, it was life with the royal family was battle of the trenches. I mean, the thing about Meghan is, which is very important to understand, I think, that when she set off to create her own brand and image in the whole Netflix series of lifestyle series, she was told she had to give up being the wicked witch in terms of the royal family. She should put that all behind her and not mention them because people want to see her, not all the time complaining. She couldn't resist because in the end, one of Meghan's many deficiencies is she has nothing to say. There's no originality. There's no profundity. She rehearses lines, she rehearses quotations from poems, but actually, she is not a fundamentally interesting person. And the interest is how someone of that nature can become a global celebrity. And of course, the only reason is because she married into the most famous royal family in the world and junked it
Yeah.
and never stopped speaking about it. And that has been an amazing draw for her. She's made a huge amount of money, causing the misery to people who only had goodwill for her.
And gave her that platform. Yeah, so many people that reviewed this book talked about how they did get a sense that you admired Meghan's ambition, Do you agree with that, or do you disagree with that? That you, in studying her, admired what she was able to accomplish or admired her ambition? And I ask you that because what you just said, um, it kind of felt like that you at least acknowledge that what she's accomplished is significant, but you don't like what she did with once she got to the finish line.
Right, she's not on the finish line yet, but on
Yeah.
the whole, yes, I agree. I mean, yes, I do admire. I admire anybody who starts from nothing and then gets a sort of success. Not just people like Meghan, but also often very controversial and inverted commas criminal businessmen or
Yeah.
politicians and all the other people I've read, or the music people. I mean, I do find people who climb the greasy pole and junk victims on the way and are ruthless in their ambition fascinating. And I think that is what makes Meghan fascinating, because in the end, there are very few women who were C-D-list actresses who were really completely unaccomplished, but who in the end have perfected an image. And it's got to be said, I mean, if 75% of people disapprove of her in polls, 25% do approve of her. And she does have a following, especially in Africa and countries like that in South America, because of what she said on Oprah Winfrey. They see her as the victim of dreadful white elitists.
Yeah.
And I think just to have created that image is awful, but it's spellbinding. And that's what I. But the only thing is with these people is that sometimes I meet the subjects of my books, and it's a very interesting conversation. I can't imagine a conversation with Meghan actually is terribly interesting.
I
I don't think there's a depth where we'd get much beyond why she pours oil on her lettuce leaf or puts her you know, the chips in a different bucket and that sort of thing. I mean, she can't cook
no.
uh, and all the rest of it, but she does look always. She works terribly hard at appearances, works terribly hard at smiling in the right place. The Richter's smile is amazing. I admire her ambition. I just despair about the way she's treated other people. And
Right.
that is really quite the dreadful. And of course, everyone is just waiting for how she's in the end going to treat Harry.
Mm.
Will she dump him? I mean, that is always the question. That everyone wants to see how's that going to work out.
This is almost perfect. This question I have prepared for where we're headed here. You write that Meghan was unable to accept that no one was counting the box office receipts of the crowds she attracted. You can see in recent interviews with Bloomberg, Jamie Kern-Lima, how important validation is to her. It's almost embarrassing the way she tries to sell herself to us. I work so hard. And then she just needs people to admire her, and you're just like, do you ever take a day off?
I think that what she learnt was that people would not admire her for the marriage. That's how she became famous. That people in America tend to like someone who's made it themselves. The climb from obscurity into global fame is what people want to see. So when she sort of suddenly announced that she was a latchkey kid and had to eat takeaway dinners, whereas before she'd said that she used to eat very healthy food and go to some fine restaurants, which of course is the truth with her father.
Yeah,
I
remember her
mean, that
dad
was
would
it. She was,
take her to ballet, a very expensive ballet class in Beverly Hills, and then they would go to the deli that had $20 club sandwiches. So that $4.99 salad bar at the Sizzler doesn't make a lot of sense, Meghan.
but it didn't make sense except that she wanted to rebrand herself as having, risen up from the depths. And
Yes.
that's what it's all about. Please recognize that I'm a great self-made person. But of course, she isn't self-made at all, other than that she snared a prince. And that's her image problem. And that's why the series looks so artificial as ever, Meghan, because in the end, everyone knows it's a rented house. She can't cook. Her offers of what you do are just frankly ludicrous because no one could prepare platters of fruit like that for the children in the morning, all the rest of it. And of course, there's a huge contradiction in Meghan. You know, she has promoted herself as the great feminist the great philosopher, and all the rest on one hand, the victim of the racist royals, and on the other hand, she's just a traditional American mom. And it's one or the other. You can't be both. Or Jekyll and Hyde. I mean, what am I? Am I a
Right.
Duchess? Or am I an American mom who has to get breakfast for the children? You can't, that's the problem for her. And that she has that problem because there's nothing other than creating a brand because there's no depth.
That is so true. The reason that it's is all over the place is because there's little truth involved in the persona she's trying to create. If there was any truth, she wouldn't be the lines wouldn't be all over the place. It would just be like, yeah, she is a feminist icon who happened to marry a prince who, but no, she stands there and tells us for the 30th time the soap story about how when she was 11, she said it was sexist, that only women all over the world were scrubbing pots and pans. And then she wants us to believe that she likes to spend a significant amount of time in the kitchen, someone else's kitchen, but in the kitchen on Netflix. And we were like, wait, we thought that this was sexist. And we thought we weren't supposed to spend a lot of time in the kitchen because that was sexist. It just like if she would stick to any sort of truth, I wonder how successful she would be. But it just feels all artificial.
In any case, the soap sud story, the Ivory Clear, her father's actually emphatic. It was completely untrue. He just built her up as an 11-year-old thinking that she'd been influencing. And when Vanity Fair asked Procter and Gamble whether it was true or not, Procter and Gamble went through all their very carefully, meticulously kept files and found absolutely no letter from Meghan, which isn't surprising because the father said he never sent the letter and there was no reply. So that's a story's bogus. But I do think there is something which I do think is terrific about Meghan. She, in her podcast with Lima, she says to her, I'm preceding the word here, she says, I've always wondered what blood type you've got, because my blood, like everything else, my blood type is overachieving,
Oh my God.
and I think that is her. I mean, she has to build herself up as this overachiever, this very special person, and of course, to some extent, she is special because of what her history. The problem is she can't sustain it for much longer, and that is a major problem for her.
Yes, there has to be more depth there. I mean, this is right in line with what you're saying. One of the themes you keep circling back to in your book is Meghan's obsession with perfection, but it's in both how she's seen and in whatever she puts her name on. So her projects as well. You even include testimony suggesting that when things don't go her way, she spirals, reaching out to anyone that can try to fix the situation, whether that's 5 a.m. emails or whatever. In the Vanity Fair piece American Hustle, Spotify witnesses support this description completely, that she tends to spiral when things don't go her way. We haven't heard some of this testimony from the producers of the new Netflix show, although she lost the first team that were working on Harry and Meghan. They brought in a new team that actually executed the Harry and Meghan project. Do you think that there's changed behavior, or do you think Netflix just has better NDAs?
Well, I think the NDAs are critical because one of the casualties, so to speak, of my book, Revenge, was the stories about her in Montreal in that fashion shoot were so unbelievably damning of her. And all the people I spoke to clearly broke their NDAs to talk about her appalling behavior in Canada during that shoot.
Is that the shoot where somebody called her a mean person?
That's the least of the negative things they said about her. They hated her at the end of that shoot, and the book describes why they hated her. And of course, what they've done now is they're much, much more careful about who they recruit to film and work on these series. And believe me, I've tried very, very hard to get through various people, all these people involved in Spotify and all the rest of it, and some have broken their NDAs. But on the whole, what you've never really got, perhaps until my book comes out, is an eyewitness account of what it's like inside the mansion in Montecito. I mean, how do they live? What happens when things go wrong? How does Meghan actually cope with these dreadful reviews she's had? And what's fascinating about her is you never see an ounce, a glimmer of misery when she's outside on parade. She always comes out immaculately dressed and smiling. And you know, that takes huge courage. It takes huge inner strength and self-conviction. Uh, and of course, time. She's very careful not to emerge till she's actually composed again. And never talks about it. I mean, the whole problem she found with this last Vanity Fair issue, the hustle issue, is that she couldn't control the content, and she is somebody who believes, understandably, she's got to control everything down to the last full stop.
But is it courage that we don't see her break, or is it the fact that when she tried to do that, like in the Tom Bradby interview, in the Oprah Winfrey interview, even in the New York Times opinion piece that she wrote, there wasn't a lot of, I mean, initially there was a lot of sympathy for her with the Oprah Winfrey interview, but that turned to resentment when everybody started coming out saying, well, we're going to fact check this and it's not very accurate. Does she recognize that people don't admire someone in a privileged position that is consistently complaining about their life, no matter what their circumstances are?
Well, I think that's right. And you're absolutely right in saying about how tearful she was in the Bradbury interview. No one's asked me if I'm okay. The tears with Oprah and the New York Times about her miscarriage. But the point is, you see, that her credibility sank once all the inaccuracies, 17 of them, in the Oprah Winfrey interview emerged. Like, for example, she hadn't really been married in St. George's Chapel, or this ridiculous conversation about the color of Archie's skin because he would get police protection. It's all lies. And that is exactly where she suddenly realized, and this again, her performance is always very carefully gauged, that she couldn't anymore play on emotion in that way. I'm sure she's very tempted to, but have you noticed she doesn't do TV interviews anymore in the same way? And when she does, for example, at the Time 100 interview in New York last year, it was so contrived, so meaningless, so that she was able to escape unscathed because no one asked her the pertinent questions. I mean, she's very careful not to be made vulnerable, as she was in the past. She realizes vulnerability won't score for her anymore.
Also, she was clever to be in the room with somebody who was villainized even more than she was, in the form of Blake Lively, who was going through a difficult period as well. So she knew she wasn't the most loathed person. This is one of my favorite products. This holiday, while others are chasing the rush, find your sense of calm with Peak. Peak is a luxury wellness brand powered by rare plants and cutting-edge ingredients, offering the perfect remedy for the season's hustle and bustle. Their science-backed botanicals, minerals, and vitamins support metabolic function, immune health, sustained energy, and radiant skin. In this festive season, choose serenity as the ultimate luxury with Peak. One of their newest essentials, the Deep Hydration Protocol, is a day-to-night electrolyte system that keeps your body and skin hydrated while promoting better sleep. Enjoy a focus boost without jitters or crash. The natural balance of caffeine and calming compounds keep you centered and alert all day long. Nutrients in their matcha help curb sugar and hunger cravings, making it easier to stick to your wellness goals. Now, I have been using the Deep Hydration Protocol every night for the past 2 months, and my skin has never looked so plump and dewy. I wake up looking and feeling like I got enough sleep. Ready to gift the glow? Unlock 20% off for life for yourself and everyone on your list. Give the gift of glowing health this holiday season. Get started at peaklife.com/Kinsey. That's PIQUE life.com/Kinsey. One agent who reveals Meghan has two characters, one concealed and one fictional, with a baffling tendency to switch from idolizing to belittling. And then you talk about that initial Vanity Fair piece that was so positive. One of the people that worked with her closely, Kashner, said she demanded that the media do what she expects. I felt manipulated and betrayed. I felt played, orchestrated. And then describing her experience guest editing British Vogue, she worked pretty closely with the actual editor in chief, Edward Enninful. And you say over the 7 months, Meghan persuaded herself she was editing the issue, explaining that the editorial team showed silent exasperation with her. The staff also wondered, did she consider that she had crossed the line in her relationship with an inful? Now, this week, while promoting his new magazine, 72, he was asked an inful whether he would feature Meghan in his new magazine. And he apparently paused before replying, Meghan and I had a great moment with the issue we did, but I feel like I have done it and I wouldn't necessarily repeat myself. That felt like such a cold and clever response to me. Just hearing that, what is your initial reaction? Is he telling us more than he means to tell us with that quote?
I think that the Vogue September issue, which was the biggest sale of Vogue in its history in 2019, clearly she put a lot into it, but it was all done for her. And it was a great success from her point of view and from Vogue's and his. They fell out over her attempt 3 years later to get the cover story when she went to Manchester and appeared in a One World charity event. And she wanted the cover and control of the content, and they had a huge argument. And that meant that he was really finished with her. He'd had enough of her prima donna behavior, and that's why he's dumped her. But also, I mean, from his point of view, what does she now bring? There isn't anything original. There's no great sales point there. And I think you've got to look at something else. You mentioned at the beginning Sam Kashner, who did the Vogue piece, Wild About Harry.
Yeah.
Now, that was a very interesting story there because I spent a lot of time talking to Kashner, and the whole chapter on the Vogue cover story is absolutely fascinating about her before she marries Harry. After the article, my book came out, Kashner went berserk and said that he'd never spoken to me and had no idea when he did speak to me what I'd written. And in fact, I'd called him and read him everything so that he knew. And why did he somersault? Because he was under pressure from Meghan. And Meghan, when she puts on pressure with all her lawyers and all the rest of it, is a terrifying machine. I mean, it's what you call the Sussex war machine. And Kashner felt it and was very upset about it. And I was upset that he was upset because I had behaved impeccably.
Mm-hmm.
But that is where Enninful,
It did feel like a little ego was involved, though, because I remember one of the statements I read didn't actually deny that he spoke to you, but he said he didn't have a lisp or something like that. Wasn't it that he didn't deny that he had a lisp or something?
I think what really happened was he was afraid that he wouldn't get future interviews with celebs if he'd spoken in that way.
Yeah.
Could he be trusted? I mean, I understand from his point of view. From my point of view, it was priceless.
Yeah.
It was fascinating. He gave great insight into the woman, which proved to be the truth. She's a manipulator and an oppressor and hates the free press if it's not doing exactly what she wants. And that is her problem now, that whatever she produces, there's a huge constituency, regardless of how good or how bad she is, who will say it's dreadful, boring. And people, women journalists, especially in Britain, make their fortune by deriding everything she does. I mean, columns of the Times and the Mail, everything, are devoted to ridiculing Meghan Markle. And of course, that is terrible for her, not to be the glowing icon which she wants to be, the great feminist, the person who received these prizes from the Kennedys or whoever, but an object and a vehicle for writing how ridiculous she is. And once you get that smell, once the smell of ridicule touches you, very hard to remove it.
When you mentioned the Manchester piece, wasn't it probably from Enninful's point of view inappropriate because the Queen had just died, hadn't she? So wouldn't that have been inappropriate to put Meghan on the cover of the magazine when Britain was still in mourning over the longest reigning queen that they'd had? I mean, it was still such a sensitive time.
I know, but she was about to die. But the argument had happened weeks before
Okay.
because their lead time is much longer. So the Queen didn't come into it. What came into it was he had a cover already. He didn't want her on the cover. And she tried to interfere with the online content. And he said, well, you can't control it. And that was her point. She wanted control. And that's where she's now falling out
Mm,
because people will increasingly will not give her control. I mean, what's the point?
yeah.
I mean, I think the first time it really went bad for her was an article in The Cut. And then the Hollywood Reporter was pretty rude about her. And
Yeah.
now Vanity Fair. I mean, it's tough on her. How does she recover? What does she do to stage the comeback? And that's always the story with these people. I mean, there's only two ways, either up or down. And at the moment, as we said right at the beginning, it's down.
They do cherry pick who they work with right now. I mean, even with People magazine has just become this glorified Sussex press release outlet. We saw that Harry handpicked who was allowed to travel with him throughout his faux royal tour in the last few weeks. And of course, that led to a lot of positive press in his direction because the original source was ooey gooey and glowing because they had that access. Um, so they're definitely can still trying to control the media, and they have found some of those friendly outlets that will do exactly what they want. And I just don't trust those outlets now going forward. I never click on a People magazine link because I know exactly who the source is, and I know that there's an ulterior motive.
Well, yes, you're right. What was remarkable about on his trip to Ukraine that he took a journalist from the Guardian newspaper, which is totally republic, very, very left wing, very anti-royalist, and has never had a good word to say for Harry. But
Mm-hmm.
clearly, and then they suckered into it because they couldn't believe their good luck to get such a story. Um, and even the Ukraine visit was a very clever bit of PR, which did work too. Harry is in a different position to Meghan because in the end, there's always a story. And you've got to remember, if, God forbid, something happened to the Prince of Wales and all his family, Harry would be the British king. He still is in the line of succession. And that must never be forgotten. So he can't be written off until William is king. And I think then he'll banish him forever. Whereas Meghan always has to fight for a place. She has to fight for the spotlight. She has to fight to be seen. And being seen is critical to her. And she can't. If there's another shooting, she can't fly there as she did to Uvalde in Texas before. People won't take her seriously, and that's her problem. What can she do so people take her seriously? And that is where she has very, very badly misplayed it. I mean, it was a great mistake to annoy the Vogue people, and a great mistake to annoy all these different journalists because you can only do it once. You can only behave badly once in these cases, and she's done it too often, and her number of supporters, so to speak, diminishes, and that's why People magazine is still so important to her.
Mm. Ugh. Hard eye roll. All right. Meghan was angry that the palace officials refused to protect her image. You go into this, and this is similar to what we're talking about with the media. She refused to accept that staff were not employed to promote her as an individual, but instead placed her within a grid of the entire royal family. In particular, Meghan fumed about the refusal officially to criticize her father, Thomas Markle. From her perspective, Meghan was isolated and vulnerable. Who does she blame now? Now that the palace isn't there, who does she blame for not protecting her? Is it Harry?
No, I think that that's her problem. She always in the past had someone to blame. Now the only blame can be on herself and on people like me who don't accept everything she says with absolute unadulterated praise and glory and gratitude. Uh, she doesn't see herself other than always being victimized because people don't recognize her greatness and generosity and campaigning fervor. We look for it but don't find it. And that's but on the other hand, what's interesting is that Ted Sarandos, the head of Netflix, when he dumped her, didn't say we're dumping her because she's no good. He said she's a rock star and brilliant and has been a great pathfinder and couldn't stop oodling out praise for her having dumped her. And that's the point. She's still got agents and people who can get the best out of a terrible position. And she's fighting. And that was her problem in the palace, going back to her issue when she was in Britain, that they wouldn't fight for her in the same way that she wanted because she wasn't the most important person. She was part of a team. She was part of a family. She wasn't Duchess of Sussex alone. And therefore she had to come under more important people. And that's what, of course, she resented. The Queen, Charles, Kate and William, these are all more important than her. And she couldn't understand that there is a hierarchy, that there is a pecking order, and she wasn't on top. And that now, of course, is even worse for her because she's slipping down the pecking order.
She is. Now, one of the, and I know you've been so gracious with your time. I'm almost wrapping up. So thank you again so much for talking to me. One of the stories I didn't catch the first couple of times I read this book, but it just jumped out at me when I was reviewing the book to talk to you. So you write, Harry's daughter was born at Santa Barbara's Cottage Hospital on the 4th of June, on the same day, but 2 days before the birth was announced. Meghan's lawyers registered the Lilibet.com website after the birth, but before the public announcement. Harry called the Queen. He told his grandmother about the birth and their decision to call their daughter Lilibet. I was so mad about Harry and his grandmother that I never registered that they had purchased a URL before they had the courtesy to tell the Queen about this child's name. I'm appalled by that. It just shows you how commercially driven these people are.
It's much worse even than that, because in Harry's version, he called his grandmother and said they decided to call the daughter Lilibet, and would the Queen approve? And the Queen did approve. The palace then, in the most unusual departure from their normal practice, called the BBC, royal commentator, reporter, and told him on the contrary. He didn't ask for permission, he announced it, and the Queen was utterly furious. When the BBC broadcast the story, saying that Harry wasn't telling the truth, his lawyers in London threatened the BBC with a writ for defamation unless they apologised and paid damages. Well, the palace told the BBC, don't you apologise at all, what we've told you is the truth. And of course then Harry had to withdraw because it wasn't the truth. So you go back to the beginning and say, when they gave her that name and the whole registration, everything, this was pure commercialization. I'm sure inspired by Meghan, because Harry hasn't got a commercial strand in his body, wouldn't understand it all. And so what you really are faced with is that she decided to monetize, as she has on every occasion, the royal family. Whether it's the coat of arms or whether it's calling herself a duchess, she actually monetized the Queen's name. And I find that alone is pretty damning of her. I mean, it was a shocking thing to do. But she's ruthless.
Mm-hmm.
She thought, this is good for me and it's good for the business. And of course, after that was the whole struggle to get Archie and Lilibet called Prince and Princess, which Charles the King resisted for some time until the baptism in their garden, I think, of Lilibet. And then the palace surrendered. They just couldn't fight him, which of course was a mistake. And we've proven to be a terrible mistake. But that's where we are. But that was Meghan being absolutely single-minded. She was going to always make sure her children had a link, and more than just a link, to the royal family in Britain. She's always so envious of Kate and her children. She hates it when she sees Kate and her children dominating the news waves. And then she quickly drags out Lilibet
Mm.
and has her do
The
something.
back of Lilibet, the back of her.
Because that's Harry.
Yeah.
He won't have that in the face.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, Catherine, you talk in the book about Kate was filmed laughing with Jill Biden. Meghan, you write, could see the unequal struggle for attention. She will have hated last week's state visit, huh? She would have just seethed.
Absolutely. And it was a wonderful photo opportunity in Cornwall, in the gardens of Eden there. Quite clearly, Kate was getting on very well with Mrs. Biden, who, of course, was very much Harry and Meghan's chosen friend in the Biden administration. So that would have annoyed them enormously that Mrs. Biden was not as loyal to the Sussexes. And of course, what happened then was after the Queen's funeral, they did ask Mrs. Biden whether they could return to America with her on Air Force One. And Jill Biden said no, that she wasn't going to insult the royal family. And that, again, is one of those problems that the Sussexes now face, that the A-listers don't want to annoy the British royal family. So whether it's the Obamas or Clooney's, none of them seem to want to invite the Sussexes to their parties. And the Bidens, well, I don't think they're inviting anyone at the moment. But that relationship, it had its purpose. It did help them. But that's now obviously been extinguished.
What a great time to speak to you, as we are experiencing something incredibly historic at the moment.
Absolutely.
Did you ever think we'd see King Charles strip Prince Andrew of his titles, of his home, and really try to distance himself with that statement, taking up for potential victims?
No, I think if someone even predicted it 24 hours earlier, they would have been laughed out of court. It was just absolutely unprecedented and completely unforeseen, but the right thing to do. I mean, the point was that we'd always criticised Charles for being hesitant and backing away from controversy, but I don't think it was Charles's decision in the end. I mean, it was technically, but of course he was forced into it, most likely by Prince William. I think Camilla also said this can't carry on. And I think the Prime Minister in the weekly audience would have told him that he has grave problems because public opinion was very much against Andrew. And in Parliament, a lot of left-wing Labour MPs would have made life very difficult for the monarchy if the line wasn't drawn. So I think King Charles's hand was just forced.
That's very interesting to me to hear you say that Keir Starmer could have had a hand in this, because, as you know, royals can be a delicious distraction in a great way, like a coronation or a wedding or a royal baby for the government and their wins and their failures, or they can be a terrible distraction. And Keir Starmer's been dealt some blows lately, so you'd almost wonder if he would welcome the Andrew distraction to kind of divert attention away from the current government's hiccups. But you're saying you feel like
I don't think he plotted it that way. I mean, the hiccups are chasms. It's a catastrophe. But I do think that he would have been asked by the king, what do you think the chances in Parliament are? I mean, MPs on the whole do not discuss the royal affairs. I mean, that's left to the king. That's separate. But this has now become a major issue because of the abuse. Mm-hmm. And so I think that Starmer would have told him, I can't control my MPs what they want to say. And if they want to bring it up, you'll be in trouble. It'll be embarrassing. Mm-hmm. So that was just one more ingredient. And in the end, this was the right thing to do. It was unprecedented. It was sensational. It was just absolutely, in the end, I think it was about the survival of the monarchy. I don't think the monarchy, whose popularity in Britain has fallen now from about 80% 20 years ago to just over 50%, is a pretty steep decline. And this was making it even worse. So I think, for all these reasons, it had to happen, and rightly so. And the question only is whether Andrew sticks to the rules, which is to disappear forever.
Mm-hmm. You've written about King Charles, Prince Charles at the time, and a younger Prince Charles could be pretty vicious when it came to cutting people out, cutting people off. But the older Charles that we've seen, even in his recent meetings with Prince Harry, his heart seems to have softened, or there's been some sort of evolution. So I do think you're right that a lot of us were kind of caught off guard by the Prince Andrew decision, because we had grown accustomed to cuddly Charles, Grandpa Charles, with the grandkids in his lap. And I when I saw the news, I thought, I don't know if I'll ever see anything like this again in my lifetime, but maybe I will because of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle.
Well, I think you've got to take two things into account here. One is the mortality of the king. I mean, he is seriously ill. And also the pressure he's under from William, who does not want to inherit a mess. He wants the stables cleaned. He wants Andrew out. And coming on to Harry and Meghan, I think for them now in Montecito, there's a moment of grave concern, because stripping the royal family of titles was unheard of in our lifetimes and for hundreds of years. They were sent to the Tower and didn't come out. Right. So I think that the couple in Montecito have got some major problems now, which is that I always thought that when William became king, he'd just banish Harry. But I think he'll banish them both and take their titles away. And now Harry might even wonder, will he take the prince title away, just to make absolutely sure there's no connection with the royal family and also his children. The Montecito couple are potentially a grave threat to the British monarchy, which altogether is vulnerable now. So I think that the Sussexes are facing their own doom as well.
Do you believe some of the headlines that Prince William really had a hand in this decision? Or do you think that the king had guidance from people like Keir Starmer, his courtiers that he really trusts and values? Because there are some people that are trying to say William is king now. I've seen 2 headlines. William is king in all but name. And I don't know if that's fair.
No, I don't think it's true for a moment. The king is the king.
Yeah.
What happened was that after the funeral service for the Duchess of Kent, when you saw that rather embarrassing shot of Andrew trying to make conversations with William, 2 days later, William flew up to Scotland, to Balmoral, to see his father, and stayed there for 2 nights, 3 days. And undoubtedly in that conversation, he said to him, we've got to end it with Andrew. I cannot carry on. I mean, it's not only the image, but also they're moving into Windsor Great Park. Mm-hmm. They would see Andrew riding or driving his Range Rover or whatever. Kate did not want to be seen anywhere, nor did William, with Andrew. So they had to cut the knot. The question was only how long it would take for the king to persuade his brother that the end had come. There could be no further negotiations. And Andrew had to accept it without a squeak, which is what happened in that statement. I mean, Andrew agrees without any protest. And I think that is the point. So William undoubtedly was the guiding hand, the force. He probably got the support of the Queen. He certainly got the support of Princess Anne, which is a very important factor too. Mm-hmm. They didn't want any more to be besmirched. And how did we get to this is the important issue. I mean, 6 years ago, he did this fatal interview with the BBC, which he lied in. But it was the publication of his emails with Epstein showing that in that BBC interview he'd lied that really was the end. I mean, the point is the royal family doesn't lie. The royal family is not there to be like a celebrity interview.
Or a politician. We expect it from politicians or celebrities, but not the royal family.
Exactly. And that was it. That was the final straw. And in his stupidity, Andrew and obviously his wife too, didn't realize that that really was intolerable. Mm. It was absolutely unacceptable. And that is why they had to go. There could be no doubt anymore. It's just that it took us by surprise that it was so total and brutal. Clearly there had been a long period of negotiation and argument before they got to that situation.
What does it say to you, that line in the King's statement about the victims and acknowledging the victims? Because I think one of Prince Andrew's, I think one of what turned the viewer off to everything Prince Andrew has done or said over the last few years is his refusal to acknowledge that anyone might have been hurt throughout this scenario. It's always just, I never met her. I don't think I met her. I can't sweat. Not, if she had this experience with Jeffrey Epstein, I'm horrified. And I'm so sorry that she experienced this. But I don't believe that I've ever met her. Not even to acknowledge any of the victims, potential victims, alleged victims, in any way, shape, or form in a sympathetic capacity. And then you have this statement from the king who acknowledges them, and says, we're with you. I thought that really felt like a punch in the gut to everything we've seen from Prince Andrew so far.
You're absolutely right, but the whole point is that all his denials in the BBC interview in 2019 were proven to be lies. Mm-hmm. And that was the point. And, the photograph is conclusive.
Right.
There's no doubt that's a genuine photograph. And so every avenue of escape for him had gone once his lies were proven. And, of course, there's a chain of emails between him and Epstein after that original one, when, of course, the photograph appears. But I think as well there probably is even more in the Epstein files, which Congress hasn't yet declassified. What is remarkable about this whole thing is that so far, in terms of men, only 2 men have actually been discredited by the Epstein files. They both happen to be British. Yeah. Andrew and the former British ambassador to Washington, Mandelson.
Yeah.
No Americans seem to have
They're
been
taking
touched.
care of themselves.
They really are. They're loading it all on. And so far, they've had 2 huge prizes.
Yeah.
As far as the Brits are concerned, it's been extraordinary.
Right.
But no American casualties so far. That really is remarkable. But you're right, of course. I do think, in Britain, like in America, abused women are there to be sympathised with. It's a terrible thing for a young girl to be taken and abused. It's shocking. So I think there's a lot of sympathy to Giuffre. And what's shameful is those who doubt her.
Right.
That is the shame, that anyone should doubt her words. Because, of course, abuse victims always suffer from a lack of clarity, often a lack of total recall. May they make mistakes just because their lives have been so appalling. Mm-hmm. How on earth are they meant to document every incident?
Right.
They're just used.
They have no idea that they should be documenting
exactly.
it. Yeah. I probably will regret saying this, but it has been heavy on my mind. Could Andrew have not known what the circumstances were? Could he just think that these women wanted to be with him because he was a prince, a British prince, and these were American girls that were enamored by royalty? Was he so dumb to not realize what the circumstances were?
No, that's impossible. After all, he was a grown man. He was 40.
Yeah. I know, but he's a grown man with teddy bears.
Well, yeah, but so is the king. Men have teddy bears. I know a general who's got a teddy bear. That doesn't mean a thing. That's all part of the upbringing in the British aristocracy. No, he didn't think when he met Virginia that suddenly she was deeply in love with him. And when he said, well, come to bed, and she went to bed, that was somehow because she suddenly was falling at his feet. It's
right.
ridiculous. 16 and 17-year-old girl.
Right.
That's ridiculous. Of course, he
right.
knew very well that she was being pimped.
Doesn't that just make you miserable that he would accept that? Doesn't that just make you just...
Well, he's not the only man who has benefited from that for 3,000 years. And even now, you can assure yourself there are hundreds of men in positions of power across the world who just take women because they know they're supplied for all the commercial reasons and abuse reasons.
Yeah,
his great mistake was to lie about it.
Yes.
If he'd just not said a word and left it, he might have got away with it. The great mistake he made was going to the BBC with the concocted view of how I'm going to get away with it.
Right.
And he couldn't resist the pressure. So that was his...
And then the idea that he walked out of that interview and thought he had just hit a home run, that he'd won the Super Bowl. He went to his mother and said, don't worry, it's all taken care of, it's over. Yeah. And just the fact that he couldn't register how...
Well, the question is, unfortunately, a bit deeper. The point is his advisors clearly were useless.
Right.
And I do think that stretches right through the royal family. I think we have lost that generation of wise men, and they were all men, who could actually tell the monarchs in the past, when to abdicate, when to make a speech, when to come down from Balmoral when Diana died. All that stuff was terribly important. That generation has gone. And in their place are people who I would call second class, even third class, who make terrible mistakes. And that was the terrible mistake, not to say to Andrew, under no circumstances should we do this interview, but on the contrary, encourage it. And of course, the advisor was quickly fired afterwards because she made a terrible mistake. And I think the king suffers from the same. He doesn't have the greatest advisors anymore, partly because he doesn't like people who say no to him. So,
Would you say that the Queen, towards the end of her life, didn't have great advisors? Because why would they not cut Andrew off at the knees earlier?
well, they couldn't because the woman was old and she had cancer, and also it was her son. And no, I mean, if she had been told by Charles, we can't carry on like this, it might have happened, as she did, of course, with Harry. I mean, Harry being kicked out completely and all his offers of half in, half out being rejected. That, of course, was the Queen, but also it was very much Charles and William at the Sandringham summit. She just sat there and let them dictate. But they, Charles and William, did not tell her, Andrew has to go now. There was always a hope that somehow. And he might have survived if this email hadn't come out. I mean, that is the point. It was he very foolishly didn't realise.
Was Sarah Ferguson done? Was Sarah Ferguson done after the Supreme Friend email? Was she done there?
Well, I think she was done always. You know, where she has no position. She was just irrelevant. She was, and what happens to her now will be interesting as well, in the sense that will she be embarrassing or not? I mean, I think now with Sarah Ferguson, her daughters will tell her, we are now hanging by a slender thread. They very generously have allowed us to keep our titles, but it does depend on you behaving. You'd make one more mistake, one more big mouth error, and we may lose our positions too. So I think there'll be pressure on the parents by the daughters to stay anonymous and discreet.
Do you think that Fergie will turn the Queen's corgis into dog influencers, and that's the way she's going to make her money moving forward?
I think she, however much she earns, she spends twice as much or three times as much.
Yeah.
She is an unguided missile.
What a great way to describe her. That is the truth. Do you have anything else you want to say about the Prince Andrew saga before we transition into another traitor?
I'll give you one more. I mean, my feeling is this has been the most sensational week in royal history, in post-war history, even bigger probably than the Diana and Charles divorce, which was itself pretty huge.
That's incredible.
But this now is seismic because it goes to the heart of a monarchy seeking to restore its popularity and its survival. It was really quite a perilous position it was in. And the question now is whether they can organize themselves to rebuild their popularity, rebuild their position in Britain and internationally. And that is the challenge. And the problem is we've got a king who's not well. We've got a Prince of Wales, an heir, who is, in my view, not quite ready to be king yet, both psychologically and emotionally, because of his own wife's illness and his own interests. And so it is an unstable moment, to say the least.
You're right. I mean, there's a lot going on, and they've taken a lot of hits over the last 5 years. I've gone through this timeline a couple of times, but Harry and Meghan leave. That's likely a blessing. I'm sure that they saw that as a blessing in disguise. Meghan didn't seem to want to fit into the royal family. So they moved to California. Prince Philip's ill. Harry and Meghan sit down with Oprah. Nightmare. Then Prince Philip dies. Shortly after that, Queen Elizabeth dies. Fergie has breast cancer. The king's sick. Catherine's sick. We don't know what's going on. We find out it's cancer. How do you organize when your personal life and your health is disintegrating behind the scenes? They've got so much on their plate right now. And, then all of the chaos with Andrew erupts. So I have a lot of sympathy for the family from that point of view.
I agree with you. I mean, I think that in the end, there are people who want to devote service, and they do a terrific job. And when they go and open a hospice or visit a hospital or visit the Vatican or whatever, it is something which brings a lot of pleasure to people. People really are very, very appreciative of the attention of the royal family, and that's their genius, and that is their value to Britain and internationally. It has been a horrendously difficult moment over the years, and now it's come to, we think, a climax. What can be worse? I mean, what can go worse? But there are things, and in the end, you've got to remind yourself that the monarchy is not a person, it's an institution. Mm-hmm. The people are just transient. It's been there for 1,000 years, and it's been through various crises before, let alone a king who cut off the head of his wife a few hundred years ago.
What a rude guy.
so let us just bear that in mind.
I mean, that is such a great reminder that things like that used to be a typical Tuesday, you know?
Exactly. Yeah. So, the monarchy will survive because it is...
It does.
It does.
Yeah.
It's just in what condition will it survive, and how will it be rebuilt, and how is it all going to fit together again? So it's gone through a very turbulent period.
So Republic doesn't make you nervous?
The public?
The Republic?
No, because no one wants President Starmer. No one in Britain wants a politician head of state, and those who do are not really properly British. I mean, what on earth do they want? So, of course, the monarchy will survive, and it's always in someone else's hands. Mm-hmm. When the abdication happened because of the American Wallace, that was a catastrophe in a way. But we overcame it, and his successor, George VI, was a terrifically successful king. And, of course, the Queen was phenomenally successful. And we'll see what happens.
I can't believe everything that Meghan Markle has done since Revenge. I was looking at You End Revenge, and then all of the professional pursuits since Revenge was written. But so much has happened in the last 12 months. And how much, when you study Meghan Markle professionally, even of the last 12 months, how much reminds you of Fergie? She's released a reality show this year. She didn't talk to Oprah this year, but we know that Fergie would do sit-downs with Oprah, had a reality show with Oprah. Fergie had a podcast recently. Meghan's had 2 podcasts recently. Fergie would do QVC-style shows. That's basically what With Love Meghan is. They both write children's books. I mean, Meghan seems like she could be on the Sarah Ferguson path.
You mean downhill?
Downhill is exactly right.
I think it's only going downhill. It's been a tough year for her. But as I said before, the problem about Meghan is she always looks good. She always survives. You never see a moment of weakness in public.
The same cannot be said about Harry.
Or Harry or Fergie. I mean, Meghan is a consummate survival actress. And you raise this extraordinary beginning of the year when she carved 2025 in the sand. And it's a very, very interesting image that it came out on New Year's Day this year, because the previous weeks had been absolutely turgid and torrid for her. She had been dubbed Duchess difficult again. There had been allegations of bullying.
Tyrant in high heels.
There had been this interview with the people in Montecito who said that she wasn't an asset for their local community. The worst thing that happened to her was that Donald Trump was elected president, so she had an enemy in the White House. She knew that Vanity Fair were doing a huge issue on her, and it wasn't going to be complimentary, she feared. So she'd had a really tough few months, as had Harry, because his charity Sentebale in Botswana was falling apart. Mm-hmm. So 2025 was the beginning of something very, very exciting for her, because not least With Love Meghan was going to appear a few weeks into the new year. And then, of course, it all goes wrong. But on that day, New Year's Day, she could only hope, it's a new year, it can only get better.
Yes, it was interesting because in November of 2024, someone from the Sussex camp had leaked to Page Six that 2025 was going to be the year of the Markle sparkle. And maybe she would say in the last few weeks, as she's accepting a Humanitarian of the Year award, she might say, see, but for the most part, I didn't see that. Did it bother you at all when she did the 2025 in the sand on that day? I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. I'm horrified with myself. But Tiggy Leg Burke had just lost her stepson in a New Orleans terror attack. And I I've said this to you off camera, but I feel like Harry and Meghan should be more considerate of what's going on in the bigger royal sphere when they pursue attention. And I thought that that was really cold, that she was prancing around in the sand, announcing a new Instagram account on the same day we're seeing headlines about Tiggy Leg Burke losing her stepson in a terror attack. I'm just too sensitive, huh?
No, you're not at all. I mean, there was that, even worse is that when the public announcement of both King Charles's and Kate's cancer was made, Harry was, I think it was at a public function in LA and made no mention of it either. And sent no commiserations or public wish you recover as well. So I mean, there's an appalling narcissism there, an appalling self-interest. It's self-love. That, especially for Meghan, everything is about self-love.
Yes,
which is become a sort of her survival instinct. Everything is about her, and so. Yes, I mean, that was the whole point of on the sand. It was her beginning
her
the new
year. Yeah.
And hope that the TV Netflix series will be a success and all the rest of it.
So then she's teasing a brand new show with Love Meghan. This is supposed to be her breakout role. And actually in Revenge, you talk about her pitching similar shows before she meets Prince Harry. So this is Meghan making her dreams come true.
Absolutely.
with Love Meghan. And the wildfires break out, you know, because it's not karma or anything that every time these two have something that they're trying to push, the universe stops them in their tracks. But the wildfires in LA break out and Meghan and Harry show up. They're not even near these fires.
They go down to Pasadena.
Yeah, and they're just hugging people. And the mayor of Pasadena, who you imagine has bigger things to do, decides to stop everything and take them on a personal tour. I had friends that were there volunteering and were told that they needed to go away for a little while. They were volunteering so Harry and Meghan could have this personal tour. They are branded tourist, like what were they branded? It was like vultures. It was something like
disaster tourists.
Disaster tourists. Thank you so much, disaster tourists. But then to save face, they delay the premiere of With Love Meghan. That was really nice of her to delay.
Well,
her
I
show.
think she had no choice. I mean, it's even worse than that actually, because they'd run the trailer. And in the trailer, there had 27,000 comments. 95% of them were negative. So they already knew there was a problem of the image. There was also the Vanity Fair article, which is, American Hustle was a huge blow.
We love it. We love to see it.
To Meghan. So it was opportune. And of course, by then she also knew that her brand was in great trouble. American Riviera Orchard, that she had allegedly nicked the idea and a lot of other things. There was a patent and trademark problem, so she had to find another brand name. So the smiles concealed huge problems. And even when she goes down to Pasadena, she gets for a child some T-shirts and something.
Billie Eilish,
and it all goes wrong because she just can't do anything without.
Patting herself on the back?
Clapping herself on the back.
Yeah.
Let me tell you a secret. This is a terribly private thing I'm telling you.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole world.
I've been in touch with Billie Eilish, and you're right. So in February, again, you're so spot on about the way that everything's fine. Everything's fine. She announces that she's just decided, because she has that freedom and that power, and she's come up with a better idea to go from American Riviera Orchard, which we have been talking about for a year at that point, to As Ever, citing the original name was just too restrictive, and the pivot was in association with the Netflix show, but it was she wouldn't admit to making a mistake. This was just she had a better idea.
Well, of course, but she knew the lawyers had told her already. But what's interesting about this, is that she was in Vancouver at the Invictus Games, wowing everybody. And I was there. It was fascinating. And will appear in my new book.
You never invite me anywhere.
Anyway, it was fascinating because then she rushes back from Whistler and shoots a very, very jerky, unprofessional video of herself with Lilibet in the garden to announce that it's now going to be called As Ever. I mean, clearly panic station, very badly edited, badly lit, and that was the beginning of the downhill. that it was all a mess.
But do you see that as a desperate attempt to look authentic?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I mean, authenticity is the one thing she keeps on talking about. Somebody who is a completely fabrication and a confection. But that's all part of this phenomena. And the reason we're also intrigued is because it's like with Andrew, you see, you can't imagine how will Meghan end.
Oh, I know.
This is the point. Andrew, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, he thought, well, what's going to be the end of this interview he gave to the BBC? And now with Meghan, we can see when the series then aired, it reached the high point of being 383rd on Netflix's most popular shows.
That's right.
It was a complete fiasco.
Right.
And
the parodies that it created,
Well,
I
absolutely.
never thought I'd see such brilliant comedy on TikTok.
exactly.
It was you're right. So, but she deemed it a success
Oh.
because she immediately goes on Netflix in some lettuce pun hat celebrating season 2. Now, is that a legitimate celebration or is this more Meghan spin? It's already recorded.
This is survival mode.
Yeah.
I mean, she knew by then it was a flop in terms of popularity. The sellouts were just a joke because quite clearly, and also it's very important to realise the inauthenticity of the products. I mean, the jam was meant to be made by her at home, and we know it was made in Illinois by a jam factory. It wasn't jam either; it was spread.
And
It
she
wasn't her
posts videos
strawberries.
of her children making them.
Making
So
of
we're
Lily
supposed to
Bertie.
think that the babies are
Exactly,
involved.
exactly. So the whole thing is totally inauthentic. And I think it was Variety that had a headline like, "We've just experienced Montecito self-love without any joy." I mean, why, it was a crushing headline.
But it was a fail on Netflix's part too, because the products were not initially available to coincide with the show. The show launches March 4th, and the show is supposed to launch in February. The show launches March 4th, and then the products aren't even available until April 2nd. Now, I'm not an expert on how to shill food, but I would assume that if you want to take advantage of the hype being built around this show, these products would be ready to go on a website, pre-order on March 4th, so that you can take advantage of the organic press that's already being generated around Meghan in the kitchen. Who do you blame for something like, or do you agree that the product should have been ready to go? And if so, who do you blame for something so silly?
Well, Meghan entirely. I mean, the point is that Meghan knows what she'd like to do but can't deliver. I mean, she cannot be a Martha Stewart. She can't be a Gwyneth Paltrow. She can't recruit people who do it. I mean, the great problem in this whole merchandising and branding is that she has neither the money, the talent, the inspiration, the people to put it together for her. Then she sort of come up with a ridiculous story that Netflix were going to produce it for her and sell it, which Netflix quickly deny. I mean, her problem is she has terrific ambition, but she cannot actually do what she'd like to do because she just isn't competent enough. Simple as that. And to produce these brands, you needed money, you needed marketing expertise, production expertise, millions of dollars. She doesn't have it, and she doesn't know where to get it. And the most important thing of all is, I think, and this is where it's so fascinating, that nobody wants to back her brand. Nobody other than Netflix, and they've of course now departed, actually wants to put their money behind brand Meghan. And that is her misfortune.
Let's revisit that when we talk about the Fortune women, because I'm curious to know if you think that's why she's doing these and showing up at these places she has no business at. So then she releases her second podcast called Confessions of a Female Founder, or she announces this podcast. It's supposed to be launched April 8th. March 13th, she announces Confessions of a Female Founder, focused on conversations with women founders. What happened to Archetypes? She told us we were going to get a season 2 of Archetypes somewhere, and Archetypes just dies. Why the pivot to Confessions of a Female Founder? And do you think that it still lives? Will she ever resurrect this idea?
Well, she'd like to. Her problem is, firstly, she doesn't know how to interview people because
Do you think I
these
should call her?
Not to give her lessons?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, because your lessons would fail because there's only one person she's interested in when she's doing. There's that wonderful interview with the cosmetic woman where
Jamie Kern Lima?
where she says we must share a same blood type. We're both high A positive. I mean, it's just ludicrous. It's all about her. And there's an extraordinary interview with Serena Williams where the first 11 minutes is all about her and not about this phenomenal tennis
Serena
champion.
Williams.
I mean, so that's why it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And who'd want to put herself or himself, as always, women. I mean, she does have this strange distrust, I think, of men.
Oh, really?
Well, it is. I can't understand. It's always about. I mean, this other day where she said she hoped Lilibet would be an activist. What does that mean? I mean, I'm
Wow.
a 4-year-old.
Wow.
And so I think she can't find anyone. I mean, in the end, she's stuck. I mean, she couldn't interview Beyonce. I think she interviewed her mother or something like that, which was extraordinarily boring.
Right. I always wondered if the women thing was trying to build an army that would defend her with asking these important women on her podcast. She's trying to, I don't know, I'm going to give you this positive media attention, so hopefully you'll say nice things about me out in the world. But I don't think she likes women. I have a friend whose wife went to college with her, and he said that she was not nice. If you walked in a room, she wouldn't acknowledge you. If she walked in a room, she had her core friends that she went to, and didn't have a lot of friends, he said, at college. And so I always, although she was a sorority girl, so maybe she's much friendlier than I can ever comprehend, but that's not what the Sussex Survivors Club says. So I don't know. That's interesting that you say that about men. Could her not engaging a lot with men professionally have anything to do with Harry and jealousy?
No. It has all to do with, and that the same way that she dispensed with her father.
Yeah.
And suddenly glorifies and completely fictionalizes her mother's contribution to her childhood. I mean, it's all, you know, she really is a case for Dr. Freud, Professor
God, I
Freud,
love
having her on the couch for a long time to discover really what's happening in there.
In your new book, do you have any new details about her early life with her mom?
Yeah.
Tom
I mean,
Bauer has come. He's rescued us.
The most interesting thing is with that South Park cartoon, you know, when they on their worldwide privacy tour, and you see this shot where they slice off the head of Meghan's head and look inside and it's empty.
Hollow.
And that is exactly the issue. But she does pretty well with it.
They predicted a lot in that episode because
Exactly.
remember when they call her a sorority girl and an influencer, like that's her job title when she goes to that school. That was hilarious. You mentioned As Ever products and the way she kind of manufactured this it looks like there's this need or want for this product that doesn't really exist. There's congratulations, you sold 10 jars of jam. Now, on May 27th, in one of her podcast episodes, she reveals she's considering entering the fashion business at some point in the future. The only reason I bring that up is because she shows up at Fashion Week with it the last few weeks. Does that mean anything to you, or is that just somebody wanting her picture taken in a duvet?
No. I mean, I thought that the Balenciaga trip in Paris was a huge success for her.
What?
Oh, yeah.
Even the Princess Diana feet video?
Well, that was a feat. But I mean, you know, you've got to remember, Balenciaga's face, I think, is Anne Hathaway, and Meghan trumped it. And it was worldwide, that entrance. And
It doesn't embarrass you at all that she invited herself?
well, why should I be embarrassed? I think it's amusing. I think it's glorious. But on the other hand, you know, it's a bit more complicated. I mean, she might have invited herself, but she would have made her agent would have said she was available. But Balenciaga was delighted with that. Here's this woman who's championing children who are victims of social media, who is now giving her name to Balenciaga.
Well, it's unfortunate that she's not championing victims of sex trafficking and speaking out against Harry's uncle. That's unfortunate. She picks and chooses her causes. Do you think it annoyed her or her team that the designer for Balenciaga gave an interview to The Cut shortly afterwards and said she invited herself? Would that have been something that...
I'd have been horrified.
Yes.
I think he was clearly off message.
He did not get the memo.
He's no longer the best friend.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a catastrophe for her.
So you're thinking she walked away from that. What was the ultimate objective then? Is she trying to enter the fashion world in some way?
Well, she can't. I mean, the fashion world is full of people who've made
Victoria Beckham
failed in the fashion world. She might make some money out of cosmetics, but nearly $100 million in debt thanks to his subsidies.
Do you think she only... I thought of you as I watched her Netflix series. Do you think she only admitted that because you talk about it in your book?
The losses?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It would reply to me.
To me, I felt like it was her PR, her way
Absolutely.
of trying to salvage and say, it doesn't matter that he said it first because I'm saying it now.
And you've got to remember as well, I mean, I set out on that book to deny him his knighthood.
Well,
because he was a rotten captain of English football, soccer. He was a terrible tax dodger and all the rest of it. I failed. I admit it was not my greatest success. Now we'll see with Meghan where she comes. Because, I mean, Meghan... she increasingly, all her utterances are word salad. I mean, it's impossible to fathom what she means anymore.
Well, and to leave the royal family and say that they held you back from something.
Exactly.
They held you back from something. Silence or silenced. I have been waiting for her to say anything of value for 5 years now. Anything. And it's just like, this bottle of shampoo's like a hug. What?
Exactly.
What? The difference, though, between Victoria Beckham and David Beckham and Meghan Markle and Harry is that I feel like David and Victoria always show up, always try to save themselves, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but don't publicly point the finger at other people and continue these negative stories by taking it to the streets.
Well, you're absolutely right. But the big difference is that the Beckhams are celebrities and the Sussexes still believe they are terribly important royals. And they're trading on a fiction and a fantasy, but also being pretty dishonest about it. And they're becoming constantly involved in politics, on preaching, and always peddling themselves as the architects of goodness in the world, whether it's philanthropy or whatever. It's all bogus.
Yeah.
Whereas the Beckhams are crudely self-made adventurers seeking fame and fortune and have done it pretty well.
And they're kind of fun because of that shamelessness. I don't mean shameless in the same way I would describe Fergie, but there's something fun about the Beckhams being like, Victoria specifically says she used to dress outrageously as a wag because she liked the cameras.
Well, the big difference between Victoria Beckham and Meghan is that Victoria Beckham is self-mocking.
Yes.
She makes fun of herself.
Self-deprecating,
she admits weaknesses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She is human. She makes no secret of all the different things. Now, Meghan has never admitted anything wrong, has never admitted any mistakes, never admitted any weaknesses. There's nothing human about her when she appears because she's so vulnerable, because she's such a narcissist, because she has no understanding of how to traffic herself as an idol, as a brand. There's got to be depth. Now, Victoria Beckham has no depth, but that's her attraction.
Okay, that's okay with that.
She's just a thin, skinny woman with a big mouth who married a very, very handsome, world-famous footballer and capitalized on it.
Yeah.
And why not?
Yeah, good for her.
I mean, people want to buy her stuff, that's fine. But Meghan's different. No one wants to buy her stuff. No one's rocking to be a follower of the Meghan brand. And that is her misfortune. So we wait and see how it'll pan out. And it's, the spiral, there's only two ways everything can go, up or down.
Right.
And of course, we're watching the slow motion.
You're so right when you talk about how Meghan constantly has a straight face and a smile. Like even when they're being booed at the Dodgers game, you see Harry's mouth start to twitch. He's physically reacting to it. He doesn't like it. But Meghan, it's like almost as if she's a pageant girl.
Well, she's an actress.
Yeah, she's an actress. But
yeah.
is the reason that because Prince Harry goes out of his way to tell Apple Plus, to tell Oprah Winfrey, and that Me You Can't See documentary, he talks about Meghan crying herself to sleep at night, and he makes comments like that. And I think in the Oprah Winfrey interview too, he's talking about her crying. Definitely talking about her crying in the Netflix docuseries. Are we not buying it because she goes overboard with the not crying? And, are we not buying it because she won't allow us to see that side of her genuinely? Or are we not buying it because Prince Harry's was at the time trying to sell us this victimhood mentality, which no longer works culturally?
Well, I think the victim worked for opera, and America bought into it for about a year. Mm-hmm. And then the New York Times switched and others switched, and they became bored.
Wall
with the
Street
victim.
Journal, too.
They became bored by the victim pleading, especially when they finally realized that the original revelations about her bullying at Kensington Palace were replicated and were true because it was happening in America as well. Mm-hmm. And you just saw the image of the woman and thought, how can she also be the beast in Montecito? What happens behind closed doors? So it's a credibility problem they have. And I think that with Harry, here's a man who talks in his book repeatedly of feeling always persecuted by a cameraman and the shooters, the shutters click of cameras, all the rest of it. And suddenly he keeps on appearing in public.
Yeah.
It all doesn't make sense.
He told us it gave him PTSD.
Exactly. So one or the other.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important issue, that he lacks credibility too and is suspicious.
I think I use the word credibility every time they get on TV or on a stage and preach about protecting children online, when they have one of the most vicious fan bases on the internet that tear apart the Wales children and judge them on their looks, on their behavior, on their clothing. Start at home, clean house first before you try to preach to anybody else about how to navigate children's safety online.
Well, the Sussex squad are very vicious. They're very violent, as I discovered in Vancouver when I was watching a baseball match, wheelchair baseball. They attacked me viciously. It's online.
Oh my goodness!
I mean, and that is the point about them. They are so self-obsessed and so struggling for survival. And the question really is, which I find fascinating, and I can't answer it right now, is when they sit down and discuss it, how do they discuss it? How do they work out with their constantly changing staff how to manage it? And the only person who can really be in control of it all, of course, must be Meghan. And it's not working for her. Mm-hmm. But when she suddenly appears in Paris, you think, well, she's done something clever. When she appears, as you were going to say, in The Fortune, I mean, the reason why she appears at some of these events, which I've discovered, is it's not because they want to hear what she's got to say, but if she appears, they know they'll get publicity.
Right, exactly.
And the Humanitarian Award in New York was a classic example. It was a completely unknown event, mm-hmm. and it only strikes a chord and becomes an issue because the Sussexes are there. They give them an award, just like the Robert Kennedy Award.
Oh gosh, don't. Or for fighting racism.
Or Gloria Steinem's award. It gives the award people certainty,
a boost,
or publicity.
But doesn't it jeopardize the credibility of the cause?
Well, of course it does. But so far, it's like no one would invite Andrew anymore to make him Humanitarian of the Year award. So those who've given her awards this year, or Harry, are going to rue the day when the truth comes out.
Absolutely. All right, so August 26th, the second season of With Love, Meghan premieres on Netflix. Do you think she was disappointed by the reception this time around? Did she really think she could release a second season so close to the first season after filming them back to back, not taking any of the feedback from season one into account when editing the second season? Was she prepared for how irrelevant season two was?
Well, I think the important difference between 1 and 2 is, which they must have realized while filming the first series, is that she can't cook. And so therefore the season 2 was her watching chefs, mm-hmm. and all of them were unbelievably boring and unbelievably uninteresting, except the last one, Claire, the English chef who had cooked their wedding dinner, who showed her how to fillet a fish. and that was quite amusing, but ish. I mean, I tried to find out how many haddocks or whatever fish it was they'd bought at the Santa Barbara fish market, because she fillets one, although you don't know it's her, you just see a fillet.
Yeah.
But there was an NDA. The supplier of the fish wasn't allowed to reveal how many he'd sold them, so they could try out the filleting. But, you know, the point is that Series 2 really was an unbelievable, awful series, but they had it.
Again, you think about optics. Chrissy Teigen told a teenage girl to go off herself. She bullied a teenage girl on Twitter, and you are trying to be the face of protecting children online. Who is managing the optics of this team? I mean, do you not think that was a big fail?
I do, and I think that's why she didn't get a third season.
Yeah.
Exactly that. I mean, and it crashed in the ratings, and no one's watching it now. People watched it out of sadomasochism. I mean, they literally wanted to punish themselves. It was so boring, but and so fake, and the people and everything about it was just so ridiculous. But you know,
like meeting all of these friends for the first time.
Yeah.
My friend so and so is coming over. Nice to meet you. That's not your friend.
Exactly, yeah.
That's not your friend at all. So in August, this is August 20th or 31st, it was reported that Meghan would not be accompanying Prince Harry on a trip to the UK. This is around the time Harry's starting to reach out to his dad. Do you think she will be accompanying him? Is this even news anymore? I don't think she wants to come back here. I think that she has decided that she's better than the UK. She doesn't need the UK anymore, but she just needs that title.
Well, she needs the title. No, she'll never come back here. Although he wants her very much to come to the Invictus Games in Birmingham in 2027. So he was hoping his father, he could move into the reconciliation stage, and Meghan will accept it. But there's no way, in my view, that William and Kate are ever going to accept Meghan back. That's finished. And I think the events with Andrew show that the Sussexes have a survival problem now with their titles. Mm-hmm. So I don't think, but I think that Harry's problem is that he desperately needs a foothold in Britain. He knows he's got to secure it in his father's lifetime. And so that's what it's all about. I mean, and he did pretty well on that trip to England. He got a lot of good publicity.
He got a lot of good press.
He got press because he was the old Harry, and it cost him £1.5 million, $2 million in some charity giveaway he did in the middle of England. Mm-hmm. So it was an expensive trip for him.
Right.
But it was a can I rebuild myself trip.
Yeah. So your reaction overall to Meghan and Harry showing up at the Dodgers game, being booed, are they going to take this as any real sign that maybe they should disappear for a little while on top of all the chaos with Harry, the thought of losing their own titles? Might they disappear, or is Meghan just revving up for the Christmas special?
Oh, absolutely. They will never disappear until they're forcibly suppressed. There's or shamed. No, I mean, they can cope with that. She's been booed before, so's he.
Mm-hmm.
No, that was just an aberration in their view. They'll reappear somewhere else, no doubt about it.
Thanks so much for watching one of my favorite best of compilations here in 2025. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Again, happy holidays, happy new year, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend.